Hey, everybody. It is your good friend, Dr. David Proden from down here in the North Star Recording Studio. And it's been kind of a wonky morning. So I had to reboot the system. And as I did that, it had me start a show that I have scheduled for Monday. So once I was 2 minutes into that and it wasn't showing up on my monitor screen, I was like, whoa. So I'll have to go in and reset that one after this show. That is the show SAS One Too Many, talking about traumatic brain injury, life after traumatic brain injury, and then also um, about the accuracy, finding accuracy in media. So, but I apologize for that. Not sure what is up here with the technology today. Been kind of a wonky one, but I think we're okay now. So, holy smokes, everybody! Wow. A few things, of course, as everybody does here at the start. Subscribe and thumbs up for the show. I did put a pinned tweet, which is new, which has the show address, so you can do that. So, hey, it is SAS. So, yeah, who's the SAS you speak of? So, so SAS, you might see that there's a 2 minute video about you out there. So, that's because when I restarted, it defaulted over to that video. So, I will just reset that um, after this show and get everything all set up for Monday. I don't know. I think I can use the same link, or maybe I'll just cut it out and use the same link. I'll figure out what I want to do for that on Monday. So we've got time. But so, whoa, just crazy. Yeah, so did I. Everything was fine. And then my system froze. So I had to do a hard reboot. And then somehow in that whole process, when I came back to StreamYard, it went to the SAS video, which is probably like, hey, like, let's go to the SAS video. I'm like, I gotta wait till Monday, like everybody else. So, but yeah, thankfully, plenty of time to get that squared away. So, a few things. It is like light snow overnight. The yard has snow, but it's going to be kind of cloudy, maybe about 40 today, and then it should start to cool down. Now, yesterday here in southern Wisconsin was 50 degrees and sunny, um, which arguably is like t-shirts or t-shirt and jeans weather. So, yeah, no snow here yet as far as like lasting snow on the ground. We do have a sledding hill at the end of our property that's on the city parkland. So that gets to be pretty busy once we get enough snow, right? The kids all head over there. So um, today is Face Validity Friday, and I do have my coffee, although I did have to mix together a Colombian and a Kona in order to make sure I had all the caffeine. So howling winds, whoa, SAST 40, sunny 41 and howling winds. Yeah, not too windy today. It was kind of windy yesterday. A lot of our neighbors now have gone to the inflatable yard decorations, which I'm not a fan of. I think most of them kind of look tacky, but so those were all over the place, right? Like up and down the neighborhood. So, oh my goodness, it's crazy. So, yeah. I have some articles and also an image that we're going to go through today on Face Validity Friday. So first, let's talk about what is face validity. So let's see here. Let me get it over. So what is face validity? So if we think of face validity, if you're describing this to someone and they're like, "Hey, what's face validity?" Right? What does it mean? So well, here's an example. If I had a thermometer and it read 88 degrees and I'm shivering, it's snowing outside, right? There's snow all around. Something is wrong. Either that thermometer is broken, it's not giving an accurate reading, it's not measuring what it needs to measure, so that's face validity, or your senses are obscured, one of the two. But the face validity is that kind of gut check. It's like, hey, something's not right here. This doesn't make sense, right? So yeah, face validity is a immediate, like, I'm not this. There's something not right about this. It's actually a big part of research. People getting research, findings, maybe things that are really off of what they expected, and pausing and saying, Like, did we something wrong here with the way we measured this or the questions we were asking or like, because this isn't at all what we expected. And maybe, maybe then you'll find out, well, it is, this information maybe is authentic, but the way that we were trying to measure it was off. But um, so hey, Solitude Surfer, yeah, good to see you also. So the Safety Doc podcast is at I call it Safety Doc now, 770 or 791 subs as of this morning, which if this was a military, we'd have the most submarines in the world. So 791 subs. It is our good buddy Swamp Dog just stopping in to show support. Yeah, thanks, buddy. Swamp Dog had a big panel last night on his channel, and I think he was stressing out his 5G Verizon with that. But great episode on gunsmithing. I was able to kind of hop in and out of that. So that, and I know he is doing some upgrades there to his infrastructure. So only good things ahead there for our good friends Swamp Dog Armory. So yeah, so we talked about face validity. Actually, let me make a note here that I have to go in and take out that SASTA video. So thankfully, I have everything kind of stored on backup. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, who just joined us, I had to reboot the system this morning, and then it defaulted and tried to start a show that I'm recording Monday night with SAST, one too many. So I will take that show down and just rebuild it and put it back up, and that'll be out there in a couple of hours so you can get ready for Monday night, 8:15, SAST, one too many. So our first face validity is going to be an image that one of my subscribers sent to me. And he has been taking screenshots from marinetraffic.com to indicate how many ships are inside of the port of LA. And actually, I guess you can track kind of shipping worldwide with this. But what he's been doing is taking screenshots at different times and then comparing from day to day how many ships are there. And then something surprising also, how many ships are not there. So meaning like one day you'll have X number of ships in the port, and then the next day, like, a notable number less. So why aren't they there? Are they just not being counted? And, how does this process all work? But that's something face validity, right? We hear about the ports all the time. Ports of Los Angeles, the ports are overwhelmed. Ships are waiting to offload goods. And yeah, while that seems to have face validity because there are a number of people I know on the coast who specifically drive to take pictures of these, the boats that you can see that are a few miles off. The is it really that all of these boats are they still being? Does it look like we're having progress, right? Because there's less boats now out there being reported, but really, are there still the same number or more? So I'm going to bring up that screenshot and then talk about what he's been doing for face validity. And that gets into this whole thing of member check too. So we'll talk about that. We have a second face validity check. This is going to be from Breitbart. And it's Twitter bans sharing photos, videos without consent on CEO Parag Agrawal's first day. So, wow. We've heard about this. I'm sure everybody listening knows that Twitter has changed, significantly what you can share and what you can't share as far as photos and videos. So we're going to do face validity on that. I think there's a few things deeper at work with that we're going to try to pull apart and unpack there with face validity. Number 3 is from our good friends at the Georgia Star News. Do you want news from Georgia? Go to Georgia Star News. They're saying more Americans than ever say they won't be buying Christmas gifts this year. Okay, so let's do a face validity unpack on that. Yeah, a day after the stock market goes up almost 700 points. All right, anyway, the Georgia Star. And our fourth face validity is going to be Citizen Free Press The title is Disturbing Study on Children in Mask Cognitive Development Drops 23%. Okay. And a welcome to Old Humble Distilling Company from Old Humble, Texas. So, yes, Old Humble Distilling Company, doing shows every Thursday night and then doing other shows about the actual distilling process. And I think has 25 Vlogmas days coming up. But Old Humble Distilling Company has been producing a lot of fun content, and I will. I watched. So Joe at Old Humble was showing how to process whiskey. So in his I guess we'd call it factory, and it was amazing to watch this process, and it was several hours. You can kind of jump in and out. He's just kind of doing his thing and narrating as it's going on. And one of the things that I was surprised with was just all of the different unique pieces of equipment, and it's not an automated process. So you're going from one piece of equipment, and doing whatever you need to do into another and things. I mean, it was well organized, but it was like, and you're trying to think of like who designed all of this stuff. And I did ask that question. Distillery, yes, distillery. Um, so yeah, it was amazing. Like, it's one of those things. It's like now where they give you kind of the how does a distillery operate, how are whatever made, and but it was cool. Like I learned a lot. It was just kind of fun because Joe's up, extremely dedicated to what he does, but he's fun and laid back. So um, let us go into over here, and I'm going to change screens. So all right. Okay, everybody, let's take a look over here. So, so yes, it is finally here. It is finally here. This is the cover. It's actually, I guess, the book. That's just obviously a mock-up of it from the publisher. But that is the cover. It's already on the publisher's website, so it won't be long, and they'll have it over on Amazon. Um, we don't know how many pages it's going to be yet. So they put a placeholder of 200, but it's really probably closer to like 260 because it hasn't been indexed. But yeah, right now it's just kind of that it's out there, right? That people know. So to find it, Safety PhD is my website, and there's a link over to it, right to the publisher. It can't. It's not in pre-order mode yet. A couple of weeks they'll have it in pre-order. Hard copy, paperback, ebook, and then later we'll release as an audio book. So yeah, the velocity of information. And when I picked out this cover, well, I mean, we narrowed it down from several several graphics, right? It's an interesting thing because they present you with this inordinate amount of graphics, and then they'll say like, what graphics do you think match the book? So then you start to pick out things, kind of this theme and this theme and this theme. Um, and then when we got down to, then they do 5 mock-ups, kind of like what you see in front of you, and then they'll say, you know, what do you think here about your 5 mock-ups? Think about it for a day or so, and then they get feedback, and I throw it out there and get some feedback on it too, and I have them all up on the wall, still all the originals. And then we have a meeting, and then they start talking. Hey, it's Robert. Um, and the one thing you never want to get on a book is a zero weight motor oil, because that stuff is impossible to get off, right, Robert? But it's great for your engine. So it's an inside joke about engines now having zero weight oil. But so yeah, when we had the meeting then to talk about kind of the final cover, a few things come to mind, and one is they're like, well, you don't want it to be too busy because now, in the old days, people used to go to bookstores, right, and peruse and look at and whatever caught their eye. So you could be a little more busy on a cover because it would be represented in regular book size. But now when people have thumbnails on a phone, you got to be careful that you don't get too busy with a cover, and you still want your title to be readable. And then we're going through colors and color schemes, and blue is kind of trust. And although the book does have more things of kind of urgency and chaos, like the red theme's kind of been overdone. And then like, okay, blue, we got it. So yeah. So anyway, there it is. I have wall art that is it's basically a 3 by 5 of my first book, School of Airs. And then what I did is that that image I had made into wall art, so it should arrive here on December 10th, and then I'll put it right next. It's over on the right hand side, so it's pretty cool. Um, as you come into the office to see this 3 by 5, and it's done on this. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a very rigid foam, like 3/4 inch thing. You can order it as a Walmart. I think it cost me like $60, and they've always been high quality. I have another one from when the show very first premiered, the safety doc. And I had not really sponsors with that show, but just people who I guess supported the show. So their logos are over there, but no longer, and back me on camera. But yeah, so anyway, I'll have that. That'll be pretty cool. Um, so I'm going to work over here and get this image from Marine Traffic available for us. So hey, how are you doing this morning? Please put in the comments. Is it sunny? Is it cold? Um, just what's going on? Because I said yesterday we had sunny and 50 here, which was like, whoa. Um, we just don't get that type of weather this time of year. So it's big. It's big news. Okay. All right. So this first one is from a viewer, or a subscriber, right? And he has said for face validity, um, the perception right now is that there's less congestion at in the harbor, right? In Los Angeles and up and down California, that more freight has been processed. So actually, what he has done, and I'm going to bring up one of these images right now. He has several. He takes these every day, and then he actually writes down the boats and makes sure that he has this kind of longitudinal record of what is out there. So here it is. And first, before we get there, hey, it is Bull Rush, a balmy 68 there in Texas. Yeah, whoa, 68 degrees. That would be pretty awesome. Um, so right here, probably a lot of these boats are thinking about going to Texas, but right now they're off of right here, Long Beach. And this is just one of the images that he has captured from that marine traffic website. Now, in addition to this, um, there are two people who are kind of going up and down the coast as member checks that I know they just don't do it for me. Me, they're just kind of doing this in general and reporting what they are actually seeing, and then also what's happening at the ports. So, right here in this image, this was one of his still images that he captured, and you can see the names of the boats and the locations and so forth. So imagine what he does now is every day for the last maybe month, he's been taking these images, and then he is documenting the boats that are there, and then also the boats that aren't there. And he has observed progressively in the last week fewer number of boats being out here in the harbor, and even kind of like further out in the harbor, up and down of the coast. And what's happening is he's not seeing the boats move into port. He's not seeing them going up to Oakland or somewhere else. He's just seeing them not counted. So that is part of his face validity, right? Is this really improving or not? And his thought is, hey, I am seeing Um, I'm still seeing when I visually look out there, right, when I'm looking at the boats that are into the harbors, and like he said, because I said, well, have the boats just come into harbor? And he said, no, because I can track that, and it that would all be there. So he said these boats just aren't being counted. And again, I've seen, one of my friends who is a pilot who flew over that area said boats are moving out further. So like um, if if you're on the coast, like in LA and that, you're looking out and you could see the boats, 10 miles offshore or whatever. He said, now they're being put out further, so you're not seeing them. Um, so what does this mean for face validity? So face validity is, let me bring up this article from the, okay, this article's from the Guardian. Um, and this was backlogged LA port struggle to implement 24/7 schedules. We've had very few takers. So let's bring this article up. Okay, and we will share screen, and share. Okay. Backlog LA port struggles to implement 24/7 schedules. We've had very few takers. Promise of round the clock operations remain unfulfilled, but fines for containers left at docks are helping to clear the way. This one is from Wednesday, November 17th. But the reason I picked this one is this was a day before the image that I just shared. So again, that subscriber has images from every day, but I just shared one of those images when we're looking here right now. So again, are we more productive at the ports? Are things being moved out of the ports? And you know, we don't have a reduction in trucking. I was talking to one of my friends that does over the road trucking. He said they're significantly behind. A lot of stuff is being put into warehouses if it is unloaded, because it's also then not being moved across the country. But he's saying, that's also slowing down the ports, because you're not having, if you do get things off, right, the vehicles are already tied up in transporting things across the country, the over the road haulers. So yeah, it's really a mess. Um, so what's our face validity there? Our face validity is that so it the conversation, right? The contemporary conversations are, the backlogs are easing at the ports. People are working 24/7, and the face validity check on that is, well, people who are observing what is happening there, people who are flying over and seeing boats that are placed out further. This specific viewer who tracks on marine traffic. Now, marine traffic could be controlled, right? Maybe there's certain boats that are reported or aren't reported. So that'd be something too, like face validity. Are there sometimes a boat is appearing, like he said, there'll be times a boat is not on for 3 days and then suddenly it's back where it was, or it's a little bit moved. So it hasn't come into port. So like, who's also controlling what actually gets reported? Um, so the bottom line, face validity, the port pressure is easing. Is that a true narrative? What the viewer is saying, what other people are saying is no, the boats are being just kind of rearranged. There might be some amount, but this whole thought that this is easing at the port just simply isn't accurate. So let's go into the chat here. And of course, it is our good friend, Bull Rush, 68 degrees there. And Robert. So Robert put, I believe if you have an older truck, they don't allow you to use it due to the new regulations they pushed or are pushing over in LA. Yeah, that's true also. So as a face validity part of this, the whole thing of we're going to get more trucks there, you can only have trucks that are, I don't know if it's 10 years old, or there's certain regulations. So you can't press into service some of these older vehicles. So that limits the vehicles. Um, and that's you're right. That is another factor in this. Um, and that's why we haven't seen much, for example, into the port of Oakland. Port of Oakland was saying, "Hey, come up here! Like we've got the stuff, and we've got the workers." Coffee, and then yeah, that same regulations apply, right? And again, there are so many over the road haulers out there. Just a list. Talked to a friend yesterday who's an over the road hauler. He is so far behind. He said like months behind. So of what he was supposed to deliver. So it's like I'm doing pickups now that I was supposed to do, September or first part of October. Um, and again, those folks are finite, right? You're not going to suddenly implement more truckers. It's so it's really really a mess. As Robert said, "Hey, it's a big mess over here." So over there, it is over there. It's kind of it is over there too. And then also the staging areas where things get taken off of rail. Those the bays or wherever these things get staged for them over the road haulers to take them the last few hundred miles. Those are all just backed up. So yeah, again, specifically talking to one of my over the road hauler friends. He called me yesterday at like 4 o'clock or something, and he's like, "Yeah, I picked stuff up at this in Chicago, and this the where the stuff comes off of rail because as kind of a hub, and he said it was the busiest I've ever seen it, and they were just saying, it's going to take weeks, if not months, to get the stuff out of here, which is now finally come in from rail as it's worked its way across from the ports. So, um, Alex, hey Alex, welcome, buddy, welcome. Alex, give truck drivers a pay raise. I agree. I'm 100% with you. And another thing is truck drivers. I'd love to have one of my over the road truck driver friends on or in the comments if someone suggests. Um, Truck drivers, first of all, right, a pay raise. And then when the whole non-essential essential thing happened last March and we were shutting down restaurants and rest rest areas and things like that, truckers didn't have access to food, didn't have access to bathroom, shower, all of these things. And what happened? Like, we didn't have the National Guard jump in and say, we are going to take over X number of way stations for our over the road haulers. So when they come in, they're going to have a hot meal. They're going to have access to clean bathrooms and, maybe showers or we'll take over this rest stop that has those things to make sure that this is provided. And it never happened. So, you go onto YouTube and you can find endless, interviews, accounts, people firsthand, truck drivers, who are saying this was crazy, right? Like we were told to all the limits were like pull off, you could carry more weight, you could run longer days, and yet like they'd be like, there's no place to use the bathroom. There's no place to stop and grab a hot meal. I mean, all of that stuff had been shut down. So to me, that was a shame, and I didn't write about it in the velocity of information. I did write a section on essential versus non-essential, and I centered it not on over the road drivers, but it was a Carl Mankey. He was a 77-year-old barber who was deemed non-essential. But if I was to do an expansion on that, I would definitely bring it over the road truck drivers. Yeah, and right now there's another opportunity to do that, right? Like why not do that now? I mean, why not say, we are going to have X number of stations or even I think a few states did this. I think one was like either New Mexico or Arizona identified a few rest areas where they assigned like National Guard to have meals and things for truckers. But as a national campaign, what a failure that it was never there back last year. So, yeah, it's kind of on the states as much as it is the feds on that. but I just don't get it. I just I absolutely I absolutely don't get how as a society, especially now, we don't treat truck drivers with more respect. Um, so I, it blows my mind. Um, so hey, we have a new subscriber. Thank you, Danny. And because you're a new subscriber, Danny, I'm going to do something special right here. We are going to do the right here. This is for the new subscribers. This is a wow. So thanks, buddy. And we're going to give you a there, big tap. Dun, 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 and back here too. Yay. All right. So, hey, thanks, Danny. New subscriber here. I'm curious, what are they doing with the items that either rot, contaminate, or rust? Great question. So, some of that stuff is just being it's rotting and contaminated or rusted. So they're getting rid of a lot of clothing, for example, came in with mold. Uh, Again, one of my member checks who works higher up in the retail said, yeah, carts, cargo would come in, shoes and stuff like that, and we couldn't sell it because it had mold. So it just gets destroyed. So worked right out of the system. And also things that have wires and motors and stuff like that, rodents are getting into. I have a friend who works at a car dealership, and we were talking last week, and he said we've had new new deliveries come in, and this is both domestic and overseas, because domestic deliveries are sitting in rail yards much longer. And he said, we pop the hood, and there's a nest for mice. And he said one new vehicle came in, and the door was filled with like corn and stuff like this, because yeah, I don't know if the mouse or whatever had made a home in this door. So um, he said, yeah, I mean, now they're having to really be extra thorough, and when they're going through all of these vehicles and making sure that they haven't had rats or mice or chipmunks or squirrels or possums, raccoons, pheasants, emus, things like that that have taken up. But yeah, they don't recondition any of this stuff. I guess that's I mean, in the vehicle stuff, they do recondition some of it, but obviously, like the shoes and stuff, like, they're not marked down; they're just simply destroyed and then just written off. So, yeah, bad, 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 bad. Let's go back over here. Hey, it's Walter. Hey, Dark, I see you, brother. So, Walter, good to see you, buddy. So yeah, it's been kind of a wonky morning because I'd restart my computer, and then I went to start the show, and it defaulted to the show I have Monday. So I'm 2 minutes into it, and I'm like, it's not showing up on my monitor screen. Like, what's going on? So I had to shut that one down, and I'll have to rebuild that show later. But since it's going to air on Monday, it's not that big of a thing. But there's like a 2 minute show out there from like my Monday, which I'm interviewing SAST, one too many. So even SAST was like, what's going on here? I'm like, oh my God, system just turned on me. So once Skynet does that once in a while, but it's pretty stable once it's up and running. It's usually at the startup here. So what's up, brothers? So yeah, I appreciate your show last night, and we are here, I'm guessing, at about 790 subs. Got to be pretty close in that area. 791. So that is great news. I gained 250 subs in November. And so if that happens again in December, I'm over 1,000. And I actually have a little sheet over here where I track number of subscribers, and then on the right is the number of viewed hours, because I need 400 or 4,000 viewed hours to be eligible for monetization. And currently I'm at like 1,500. So I'm working those. I'm 1,550 as of yesterday. So both of those need to increase. So I think obviously I'll hit the viewers first, and then I'll hopefully get that number up there to 4,000 viewed hours. And then we'll see what happens for monetization. What would be cool to be monetized is it does give me more exposure, a stronger SEO base. Not obviously for the channel, but for my book, my books, philosophy of information. And then this one right here, guys, School of Airs, Rethinking School Safety America. It is on Amazon. Well, it's on places that sell books. You can get this anywhere that sells books, right? It was funny because like when this originally came out, it's not self-published. It's through publishers, so it does have that wide range of where you can get it. But yeah, someone was like, "Well, where can I get it?" I'm like, places that sell books. And if you go to a bookstore and you have the ISBN number and whatever, like they'll get it for you. But otherwise, like it's not hard to get. This isn't smuggling a bag of potatoes into Pakistan or something like that. I mean, this is not a difficult book to locate. Plus, it's in a lot of libraries. But for those of you who have had this, please leave a review. I have been at that 44 review number for a long time, like a few months. and I'm like, come on, like we got to get to 50 reviews at least by the time the new book comes out in April. Now the reviews have been positive. So that's been awesome. But I'm like, if you have this book, I know people out there who do dark. If you have the book, just a 2-3 sentence review on Amazon of something impactful from the book. Hey, especially right now, we got a lot going on in the realm of school safety and community safety. And there's a lot of wisdom in that book. Please just say, hey, I'm going to carve out here 20 minutes for the doc. I'm going to make a few notes and I'm going to get a post up there on Amazon. I'll be like, thank you. So, and this morning, I had slept really well. Like it was one of those mornings. I'm like, if I didn't have the show this morning, I'd probably still be sleeping. It was just like I don't know. It's so what's up with this validity? Does it have a face? It always has a face. So I've never been a drinker, but let me tell you, Macallan 12-year in a coffee cappuccino is just splendid. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's no spiked coffee down here this morning, but again, it's this combination blend. So I could have like stayed there and done the trickle to get the Kona blend out, but I'm like, I don't have time for this. Come on. So, but it is all like high caffeinated stuff. So, dude, show me how to do those graphics. So graphics, I don't know what graphics. What are you talking about? I'm not the graphics guy. So, if you're talking about those little things on there, that's just from the program that runs in the background here, which is UCAM 9. So, which is a cheap program and it does a nice job. I've had it for quite a while. So when I just record videos of myself, then I render and with my editing software and stuff, I record those with UCAM 9. And so UCAM 9 has a ton, is again, super easy to use. And it has a ton of features. So like right here, I can make it snow. So, which is kind of cool, right? And then there's one here where like I can put a whole bunch of microphones up in front of me and stuff like that. So, and let's just take a second here since no, I'm not going to do that. So we got the snow off. We've got this. I can put myself on a jumbotron. So let me do that right here. Hey, I'm up on a jumbotron right here at Dark Stadium. Talking to Dark here. It's 107, 106. So I'm up here on the jumbotron. So that's kind of cool. There's other features with this too. I don't mess with it too much. It's kind of novelty, but I don't know if you've read your paper this morning, but there it is. The headline, Safety Doc at 791 subscribers, extra. And with the way currency is going, hey, we're going to have some new currency here with the Safety Doc. Here's the one. I like this. It's the press conference one. So yeah, live here from the North Star recording studio, describing what happened this morning. Yeah, we did run the wrong show. So we're going to correct that. And thanks. So yeah. UCAM 7 in dark. I mean, you'll instantly know how to use it. Like this interface is super easy. Um, so again, it's old. It's still available. It's old software. I normally don't use it that much, but it's kind of fun. Hey, welcome to Juan the Aztec Patriarch. So Juan coming to us from the Tenderloin, San Francisco. So Robert wrote, I'm going to have to purchase some Aegis gun care with everyone saying how good it is. Good deal. Alex, hey, company drivers calculate 2,500 miles a week paid at 41 cents per mile, which comes out to 1,025 a week. It's crappy pay. And if your company does not give you a load, then no pay. That's horrible. I mean, that's miserable, right? It completely undervalues over the road drivers. This is a complete shame. I mean, and this is as a face validity check too, right? Knowing how important it is, especially now when supply chains have been interrupted, that we have a significant segment of our supply chain, which is our over the road drivers, which really nothing is being done except, oh, like you can drive more and you can carry more, but we're not going to pay you more. And also, we're not going to designate, specific areas you can go to, and we'll have hot meal, shower, laundry service available. They always had these commercials. What tide would come in after a tornado or earthquake or something somewhere, and hurricane, and they'd have this big mobile vehicle, and people could bring their laundry and stuff like that. So I don't know. From face validity, it doesn't make sense to me. I can't. Maybe it's because I don't know. Obviously, if there was a large scale over the road truck driver strike, I mean, people would take notice, and there would probably be at least short term changes. But to me, that's complete garbage. We don't, as a society, show the respect to over the road drivers that we should. It's appalling, absolutely appalling. Morning, gentlemen. Hey, Juan, get some of that zero weight oil ready, because Robert is he's our zero weight oil expert. And but Juan, good morning. Juan was telling me too at the start of for face validity, right, of what was happening back in March of 2020. He was saying that's before there were stimulus bills and selling or not selling stimulus bills and additional unemployment things. People were selling stuff like crazy. So Juan was saying, I'm picking up like vehicles for a few $100s or a few thousand that were several times more valuable. Like even just like the parts on the vehicle, like the tires, because people at that time just needed cash. So the face validity was you started to see that people were panicking that they didn't have cash and that there wasn't going to be something. And that also was happening on like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. Like people were selling anything anything they could, like all their storage shed contents and gaming systems, computers. I was talking to Nick Schuliner about that too. Nick picked up a new laptop and something else, and so he, as a college student at Washington State, when the time was hit, and people were willing. So they're like, okay, what'll you give me for this? We'll order $150, something that they bought new for $1,000. They're like, okay. And they'll like, can you come get it? And you're like, well, no. And they're like, I'll drive it to you. And it'd be like a 90-minute drive. But back then, gas was $1, remember? Because of gas, everything is plummeted. So if people can get cash, so it's like, whoa. Yeah. So UCAM 7. So yeah, UCAM 9. There might be a newer version of it now. But it is kind of fun. I mean, it can get a little over the top if you use it too much. So I just throw it in there once in a while. It has especially when my kids would do stuff like you can have some pretty neat, also kind of cheesy effects. But once in a while, they're okay. I don't think you can customize out anything though. It's not like that. So Danny's like, "Hey, good morning, brother, and, can you show Dancing Girls in the Back?" You know what? I actually do have a that is part of I'm serious, Walter, it is part of Camtasia. They do have that. A G-rated version of that, but I'm not gonna show it. It would take me a while to find that, but it is actually in there. So which you probably didn't expect. Robert, no sound. Um, I lost sound. Oh, so does everybody else have sound? Um, I lost sound. I guess my phone linked to my car Bluetooth as it's wiring. Never mind with those. Okay, all right. So yeah, I got a new phone, an S21 Plus, so a bigger phone, and I like it. Like, it is great. It's a big upgrade from the one that I had, and I had to, get that hooked into my car's Bluetooth, wireless stuff yesterday, so but man, that thing is awesome. So, let's, first of all, if you haven't hit the, thumbs up, I see there's 13 in there. I appreciate it. I do. Um, please do that, and I do have the pinned now up in the top is the address for my channel. So it's easy to subscribe. You're like, oh, how does this work and all this stuff? Like, you probably know it, but it's right up there at the top where you can like share it out. So I appreciate it. So let's get into our second one. So our second one is Breitbart. Twitter bans sharing photos, videos without consent. Okay. So what's the face validity on this? Like, so you see this and you're like, hmm. So face validity, there's a few things. So um first of all, like what who does this apply to, right? Is this my own family? If is it public officials? What constitutes explicit consent? So do they have to sign off? Can they just say yes, I have permission? But like then you wouldn't have a record of it, right? So like is there going to be a form coming out from Twitter? I think there are levels now you have to kind of go through to indicate that yes, you have permission, stuff like that. But I think right, if they're going to do this, like there's probably much more that will go with that. And from having published the books, I know the layers of consent and liability agreements I needed to get through the publisher if ever I used an image or I interviewed someone, even if it was a short quote. So what is that going to look like? Um, we also have face validity. This is kind of now in concert. Google has removed the thumbs down for YouTube video. So it seems to be from face validity what's going on here. It seems that it's limiting negative feedback and what it's just trying to limit the sharing of information. So is it trying to protect people that, oh, like I shared this video and my friends are whatever were in it, and this is eh, so anyway, like now they're like, hey, why is that video out there or that picture of me and stuff like this? Also, anything that's been violence related, whether for example, the Waukesha Parade massacre, people, if they post videos of that now, is that what they're aiming at doing? So but this you go into all of these things. I mean, videos that were taken on you know in early January last year in Washington DC. I don't know how so from a face validity standpoint, I'm like, how are you going to actually do this? And also, like, are there what else is at play here? Like, is in the Twitter in the midst of being sold because their CEO Jack Dorsey, just stepped down. Um, do they know that there's pending litigation against companies by people saying, hey, like my this picture of me or this photo of me or whatever was shared without my permission and it's shared on your platform? So then, you know, but so what does this all mean? Well, let's go to the article. So from a face validity standpoint, the quick face validity thing is there's no way you can get consent if you take a picture and it's you at a Milwaukee Bucks game and there's 1,000 people in the background. Like, you can't get consent, right? So there is this big problem on how would this logistically be done? And they probably know that. Well, I mean, not probably, they do know that. Um, so let's go over to the article here. So, and all right. So if I do this right over on this screen, let's try this here. Yeah. Hey, that worked okay. So not this 5 things you should know about my husband ad, which is on the side, but hey, no thanks, by the way. Twitter bans sharing photos, videos without consent. So he's like, "Hey, I could wear a sport coat today, but no, um, I'm not going to." It's a little too much. Like the dark shoes, dark jeans, and the dark shirt. Uh, I don't know. I'd break that up. I'd do something a little more fun with the shoes, I think. But anyway, it's too serious. So here we go. Just one day after Jack Dorsey was replaced as the CEO of Twitter by the company's former CTO, Prag Agrawal, the platform has banned the sharing of any images or videos of people without their explicit consent. So that's the thing, explicit consent. So what does explicit consent mean? Um, to me, that would have to be something in writing or that you had some I mean, basically, it means it has to be in writing, is going to be explicit consent, from someone that they had the opportunity to review the picture, you did not alter the picture or video, and then they have given, um, a written because if you get to this thing where it's going to be if it's ever legally challenged, and you say, "They gave me permission," they're like, "I didn't give you permission." Well, that's I mean, it's your word against theirs if you don't have a piece of paper. And I guess like you could audio record, right? Like them doing this, but that's just not the way that it works. And like I couldn't do that for my book. I was saying, hey, like, can I just record you on the Zoom call, or can I just record this part where you're saying it's okay for me to use this? No, they want it. So that's interesting that they use the word explicit consent, or the words. The far left company stated the misuse of private media can affect everyone, but can have a disproportionate effect on women activists, dissidents, and members of minority communities. I would say face validity, that's not a false statement, but also against, government officials, people running, people who are the heads of companies. So I don't think that disproportionate is necessary. Where it says this, remember, let's read this. The misuse of private media can affect everyone. Can doesn't mean that it is disproportionately affecting women, activists, dissidents, and members. So it can. So what is also face validity is they're very careful with the words that they're selecting right off the bat in their quote here, right? Um, so anyway, and then they have this this crazy stuff here. So the company added that it would try to assess. Let's make this a little bigger. It would try to assess the context in which the content is shared, and in such cases, we may allow the images or videos to remain on the service. Okay, so first of all, who's going to do that? Who's the workforce? How it has to be subjective, right? Um, they're making this determination like it's just impossible. I mean, with the amount of to not have algorithms kind of do most of this work, and you're going to we'll have people review these, and by that time, right, it's all old news. So it just isn't going to work anyway. Um, so yeah, this is basically just shutting down um, the sharing of photos and the sharing of video. So um, let's get over here to one. Other social platforms will follow as well. Yeah, absolutely. Like, just expect this. And there's another part to this. So from a face validity check, okay, logistically, could you could you do this? Logistically, no. How in the moment, right? How are you going to, or even if you had ready to go? I mean, how would you prove that you had explicit consent? Now, this is just also in terms of allowing it on their platform because they can just suspend you or boot you off. But is there more to this? Is it the fact that um, there's this part of copyright and intellectual property, which is known as the Case Act, which went into effect in January. Now the rules are being rolled out for that about this time, right? Of what that actually looks like in practice. So, is there something where some of these registered, if these photos get registered and then they're shared, uh, that people who own these photos or companies that own these photos could then come in and start suing Twitter and saying they're being shared on your platform. This is intellectual property material. Then Twitter would have to get into this big takedown thing, kind of like YouTube does if you post copyrighted video or audio. So there's a lot more to this, but the way this is framed, I think, is really to try to um, right steer the content which is on there, and also to prevent the sharing of, especially during um, rallies, uncertain times, chaos events, massacres, the sharing of video, right? And some of that shouldn't be, um, you know, graphic stuff shouldn't be shared out there. But um, yeah. So anyway, I look at this and I'm like, you can't, from face validity, you can't enforce this without taking your whole network down and making it so cumbersome where people just won't participate in it. So is there this part where they're just like, we know this is going down. We know like this model isn't sustainable. So we're just going to make it look like we're we're doing steps to, you know, to fix this, right? So people come back and say, you knew there were these problems with whatever. And it's like, well, look at the measures that we took, right? So anyway, I think there's a lot more to this. As Juan said, I think there's going to be others doing it. Um, so morning to Cameron. Hey, morning. Hey, Cameron. Right. So Cameron, actually, the avatar you have is similar to one that I was considering for my book cover. Similar. It was not too far off, and actually, that's actually not too far off, like from my book cover. Different shades of blue and stuff like that. But um, morning, buddy. Um, Danny wrote, "What do you think about big tech bringing talent from other countries instead of some putting some American values and ideas?" Um, so, and maybe that gets into the visas of bringing in the talent from other countries. So, I, boy, that's a good one. I haven't thought too much about that. I am I've always been an advocate, right, of meritocracy, right? And I think we've gotten far away from that in many many industries, um, in using that as kind of our core for how we manage, I guess, and lead our organizations. But yeah, I don't. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more about that one. I'd have to think about that a little bit deeper. Um, so yeah, American values and American ideas. Yeah, and what are those right now? I mean, I would say, yeah. I mean, uh, capitalism. You know, freedom. Uh, I I so I'm not. I'm pro-American, right? I'd like to know what a shared set of American values are, um, because, for example, um, they're close to where I live. They've renamed one of the high schools, or they're in the final step of it, because it's named after James Madison, and because of going back and saying, um, uh, our capital in the state I live is Madison, and saying, the past of this person, we don't want them to be, just like what Thomas Jefferson's statue was taken out of New York City. So I don't know. I It's a good question. It's a great question. I think we'd have to come back if we were to bring people, and there'd be great to see study of that. I mean, as you took 1950s, what were American values and ideas? I know back in 1940s, so at the start of World War One, American values and ideas. It was hard to get people to kind of coalesce around that, and I wrote about that in Velocity of Information. Um, there was something called the Committee for National Morale, and they were going out and talking with rural, urban, different ethnicities, different level of education. I think back at World War II, there were still like 3 to 5% of people had zero literacy skills in English or other languages who lived in the U.S. And it was all over the place. It wasn't kind of well defined. So that's where they came in and were saying, well, this is the democratic surround. They did something in the Museum of Modern Art, the Road to Victory campaign, which if you look that up, there's images of it. I was trying to say, well, here's what American values are. So, right. And it's a great question. Having an idea is very different than trying to execute it. How feasible is it to these companies that any resource to follow through ideas are so gray in paper? Right. So face validity on the whole Twitter thing is right. It's an idea from resources, and they're not going to commit imagine, like, you'd have to have this massive, and these people are going to have their own biases. What are you going to have for rate of reliability if they're looking at, oh, you can share this picture, or this does constitute explicit consent? So, to me, right, from face validity, it doesn't make sense. It's just like saying, we are going to make sure that every single car tire in on domestic vehicles is at 32 psi, like every day. Well, you just can't do that, right? It will never happen, and temperature changes and things like that. So tire pressure change. I mean, you can never create the system to do that. Which is, they're saying this, and it's like, well, you can never do that. If anybody in the background of a photo, or what if they're 100 feet away in the background and you can't tell who they are because they're not facing you? Do you still need permission from them? I mean, like, all of these, you'd have to have these terms and conditions, as you guys have talked about. Your terms and conditions here, would be 1,000 pages, right? Well, if it's a shadow, if it's a ghost and you can't make communication with it with a spirit box, then you're okay. But you have to have a documented attempt of you in a spirit box session before you post this picture of a ghost. But so, and we haven't seen. So this came out big news, right? Because really, it won't be long if Twitter sticks to this, that the platform itself will just die because no one needs discussion threads. Something else will get out there. But I think there's something here with the Case Act, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see that coming in. And this is kind of like a Napster and LimeWire thing back, like 30 years ago, people sharing some files, stuff like that. I think there's a fear here of saying, if any of these photos are registered or copyrighted, there are two different things. It's cheap to register a photo. Once you take a photo, like, you already own like the rights to that photo. But then if you register and copyright it and someone else uses it, then you can recover. For example, if you were to litigate against them, things like that. That's very unlikely to happen. But obviously, Twitter knows that people are sharing photos that are, memes and things like that, which are copyrighted, right? Which professional, journalists who are getting paid to take those photos, and those photos are showing up in newspapers, or they're sharing. And I think that's where they're freaking out a little bit on this. Plus, like, some personal or some liability of sharing, someone who's saying, hey, like, but anyway, let's kind of get off of this one. But yeah, that's wild. Let's go back to the discussion here. And I've had a TBI. I got my hopes up. The last video, a little. I don't know what happened there. I thought, oh, yeah, John, traumatic brain injury. Well, Monday night, the video will be live Monday night. I'll restructure all of that. And TBI is traumatic brain injury. SAS one too many was in an accident when he was, I believe, 21, and for over 2 years, like in rehabilitation, it was just so he could get out of a chair, right? And now he is has worked his way up over 30 years in computers and in technology to work as an IT technician for a very large company, right? But and he's going to talk though about this process of having the TBI, and yeah, he and not to share too much on this, but it's amazing because he was saying it was months he would job shadow and just watch somebody when he was trying to like start to relearn some of these skills, and then he just said, "Put me on a shift. You don't have to pay me. Like I need the experience." And um, but yeah, it is an amazing story. And now if he rides motorcycles, hobbies, he's like he's got his little airplanes, remote airplanes he flies, stuff like that. It's just a cool guy, hard worker, cool guy. And um, so he's going to kind of unpack and how it affects him today, right? And now there's some things later on, like 30 years past the TBI event, that are starting to surface. Um, so we've been putting in a lot of work on getting that show ready. So yeah, so keep your hopes up, buddy. It will be a great one. John writes, that's communists destroying history to control us. So I wrote about in Velocity of Information how fast dictionary terms are changing, and I had one chapter devoted to that, where overnight, something would become politicized, and the next day you'd check out the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and the definition of that term had changed overnight. And so that is something that is happening. So right, um, it's very controlled. What is history is becoming subjective versus objective. Um, and that's one of the things. Everything is laminated to time and context. So if you take things that happened even 200 years ago and you try to apply what today's standards would be for that, or expectations, of course you can point out things. And let's just say it's like travel. Let's just say it's 100 years ago, and you have this like Model T or whatever. You're like, look at this thing. No seatbelts, no turn signals. No whatever. Well, at the time, right? Like, none of that was required. There were few vehicles, um, and they did actually they were pretty strong and pretty sturdy, things like this. But obviously, right, if you're comparing it today, it would look obscene, and you'd be like, oh, these people, so informed and uninformed and stuff like this. So I hate when that happens. People, take things out of their context of time and situation, because you can make anything look bad if you do that, right? You can make anything look bad if you're going to measure it against like right now or a specific other time. Like in a School of Airs, I wrote about that. Like safety was always a messy thing, because people would try to measure two things in safety against each other that happen in different places at different times, different contexts. So imagine like if you're talking about like some event that happened, in 1958 versus like now, or, and you'd be like this and this and this, but well, back in 1958, like no cell phones, the communications were kind of scattered and things like that. And I mean, so all of this stuff is different. You can't compare. That's where I just put in there. You can learn, you can understand how people did things at those times, and it doesn't mean like there aren't things you can pull forward from that and things that weren't done well. But you can't be like, oh, like criticizing because they did things in a certain way. I don't know. People do that. Road to Victory. Yeah. It's kind of interesting if you go in and type in the Road to Victory you can bring up these images. So one thing in World War II at the start, the um, Committee for National Morale did all of these images. So they were in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and then they got in newspapers all around the country, and they would show people in different levels of work. So they might show like a homeowner um, digging up their yard to plant a garden, a victory garden, right? It might show someone working on a plane, at a factory or something like that. So it was the thing was they discovered most people the messages sunk in when they were done in images, visuals. So they would go 80-90% visuals, 10-20% narrative, but almost, probably that 90% visuals. And that's something like we don't see today. Also, like when we communicate things out to people, we get a lot of text. Like again, we talk about the Google in terms of or Twitter terms of conditions and stuff like that. I mean, all that text. I mean, I don't know how you do that in image, but I suppose you could do some, you could have some image examples of what constitutes a photo where you'd have to get permission and not. But like the church in our hometown or hometown town here, they are remodeling and building on and completely like turning the church 180 degrees. So church was built in the 1850s, and so they raised all this money, and they're doing these updates, right? So the first couple months they sent out a 2-page thing and said, here's an update on the boilers and like this addition and this, and there was never a picture. And somebody said, hey, like this is too much. Like the information's accurate, but like people want to see pictures, right? So show them pictures from the inside, show them pictures downstairs where the new meeting room is going to be. And so they changed it. And then people were like, yay, because, they donated money and things like this. So now, and the thing just came out yesterday, it comes out once a week. It's 80% pictures. So again, it's maybe like 8 pictures, and they're and then, there's a little description next to it of what's happening right there. And then kind of like some small summary statement, like, we're 72% along on the whole thing. But then people are like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. I can see on the steeple, like here was the steeple before, and here's like a picture as it is now, and here's a difference. So like that makes sense. But if you just say like, we've improved the steeple, people are like, what does that mean? So, Walter's saying, got to get back to work. All right, buddy. Thanks for stopping in. Okay, sec. Danny, our role is not be bound by the First Amendment, focusing less on thinking about free speech, but thinking about how times have changed. Prague stated on the first day. Oh, yeah, right. I didn't mention that, but you're absolutely right. So basically saying we function outside of the Constitution, and we are not bound by the First Amendment and free speech. So the whole thing with First Amendment too, right, gets into what is it? Section 230? Let me type it here. Where if you're Section 230 of the Decency Act says that no provider or user of an interactive computer shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of the information. So basically, they're saying they're a platform. They're not the ones generating this, but there's been question of saying should they be responsible if people are posting this stuff on their forums? And it seems like if they're censoring it, there's already this line that they've crossed into culpability for assessing what should be there and what shouldn't. But yeah, so people, this is the whole time in context thing. Oh, the Constitution is outdated, or it was practical at that time. We have a modern interpretation of it. And this, this is just the way that things are going. So yeah, it's bad. So bad. All right. Let's thank you for the 15 subscribes over there. So I appreciate that. And yeah, of course that when you post in the comments too, I do respond. And it's if there's 10 comments down below in the next day, it's awesome, right? Because it helps the algorithm out. Um, you know, and I love your feedback. Martin posted a terrific example a few threads ago, a few shows ago, and he was saying, "Hey, um, like if think about it this way: if you have a car, we're talking about how kind of this use it or lose it, things. If you have a car and it was a brand new car, but it sits in a garage for 2 years, right? Versus a car that you've had and you drive it around a little bit, which one is in better shape?" And the conclusion was the one you drive around a little bit is in better shape because the one that's sitting, the gas has gone stale, the battery's probably gone dead on it, right? The tires are probably flat. So, one of these things too is, yeah, when we're having that discussion, it was about entropy, right? That was actually a Safety Doc podcast. So, entropy. And hey, it is WandaVision. Dun dun dun. The purple wrench. You are you are the purple wrench. Oh my god. Oh, that's funny. That's hilarious. So by the way, let me issue a few. I guess you are. Oh, wait a second. Um, let me do a few wrenches here. So um, this is a family show, right? Everything I do, um, you know, it's if it's G rated, that is good stuff. So John Rice, dun 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 dun, you are now a moderator. Our good friend here at Wiz Division, you are now a moderator. So that means if things get a little wacky in here, right, please jump in, put somebody in timeout, or if I'm missing something, because obviously we don't want that happening in the side chat. Usually it's pretty tame, but you never know, right? Like someone can come in and start posting threats or some real, just like kind of gross stuff, and it's really not the place for it. So let me see. Like, hey, Juan, I don't know. You are moderator too, Juan. Walter, of course, buddy. Robert, yes. No, you are a moderator. So I almost took your wrench away, buddy. I wouldn't do that to you. Danny, you're right there. But after like a couple shows here, buddy, I'd bring you on as a monitor. Alex Patino has been vetted by Aaron Clary. So, and that's where we're pretty good. We're ready to go. And I'm gonna put DLD, even though DLD has not made me a monitor on his site, which I'm kidding there a little bit with him. But so I just stocked up the monitor gang here. So, but in a good way. So I'm glad we're doing that. So you guys have the blue wrenches now. You're the blue wrench gang. Appreciate it. So if things start to get wild in here, we start to get overtaken. By a bunch of anti-American, anti-face validity people try to storm in here, the blue wrenches can time them out. So, all right. So we have two more. So the next one here is the Georgia Star. Dun, 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 dun. The Georgia Star. More Americans than ever say they won't be buying Christmas gifts this year. Okay. So my face validity issue or examination with this is, okay, what does this mean at a face validity standpoint? What doesn't quite sit right when you see this? So one of the things is, and I'm going to bring the article up in just a second. One is more Americans than ever. Well, first of all, like, who are you surveying, right? Where are you getting this information from? Who are you talking to? So I guess, that's a headline we can see in the story, but won't be buying gifts this year. So a headline like that kind of indicates a few things. One is either people don't have money. Is that the case? People don't have money. Number two, people don't have the goods out there to buy. Like there just isn't the stuff that they want to buy. It hasn't come in. Or is there something else at play? Number three on that would be crowd in behavior. And I wrote about this in the velocity of information. If people feel that they're in chaos times and it's likely to get worse over the next months or years, they're probably not going to be buying They're gonna be really careful, really consolidating. There's not that discretionary cash that they're going to be putting out there. So when people feel uncertain, they're not going to load up on Christmas items. What they will do though is they'll do things like they'll decorate and keep their Christmas tree up until like May, which I wrote about in my book. That's actually a thing in crowded behavior. But or I guess you could go on a fourth face validity of like people just aren't materialistic. I don't believe that. So I think that one's off the table. So let's get over here. I think this has to do with my whole thing here of face um, with face validity and crowd and behavior, that people just don't believe we're out of anywhere out of chaos. So they're just kind of doubling down. So right there, let's get this bigger over here. So, all right. All right. This is kind of an interesting photo because like this lady back here with the red, I don't know, sweatshirt, whatever. And this guy, I don't know what he got for a gift, but he's obviously like, whoa, like this is not the it's not the two-way radio I was asking for. And she's like, what? Sure it is. He's like, you have the receipt? Take this back. And then this lady here is like celebrating, but she's like kind of just celebrating on her own. I don't know. And this kid's like, whoa, wait, I got a buzz saw. This thing actually says buzz saw on it. So it's kind of an edgy gift for a 3-year-old, maybe going on 4. So, but at some point you got to get your first buzz saw, right? So anyway, here's the headline. November 30th, 2021 from the Georgia News staff. So by the way, when you're a writer, so thank you. Oh, when you're a writer and you're trying to cite an article where they've done this trick here of saying Georgia Star News staff, that becomes a real issue because it's kind of like that whole Twitter giving credit to somebody. It's appropriate, right, to cite it this way, but it's a weaker citation, and it's kind of weak for the newspaper to say, hey, like this person wrote this, but we're just going to generally give credit to everybody. So let's go down. Well, no, it's by Alan Evans. Well, that's kind of weird. So usually you don't see the two of them together. So a record number of Americans say they won't be purchasing gifts for, let's make this a little bit bigger. There we go. A record number of Americans say they won't be purchasing gifts for the holiday this year amid ongoing inflation concerns and supply chain disruption. A survey shows roughly 11% of Americans said they expected to spend no money at all on gifts during the holiday season, according to a holiday retail survey by Deloitte. So it's one of the larger survey companies. The numbers, the highest since Deloitte began its holiday retail survey in the 1980s. All right, so let's see. Almost 2/3 of those not buying gifts earn less than $50,000 a year. Those earning, okay, kind of, I get it. Consumers cited inflation concerns, so you're buying less. All right. The poll surveyed 4,315 customers. Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good sample size. I mean, like, I'm not a fan of surveys, by the way. In School of Airs, I wrote 7 ways that surveys are awful. They're just the constructs, how they're put together, just aren't very good. And if people aren't sure, they kind of have to guess. And anyway, but this, so if you're surveying here between September 7th and 14th, that's a little interesting to me because, like, if you surveyed me between that time and you asked me, what are you doing for Christmas this year? I'd be like, I have no idea. I spend less. I don't know. And at that time, what's missing out of this from face validity is what was in the news at that time? Like, what were the headlines? Because I think the headlines back at the start of September were really about like this disrupted supply chain. So people were probably just responding to this also with what they were hearing in the media, like the media saying there's not going to be stuff for you to get. Like, so, and so they're like, well, I'm answering this, so it's probably not going to be there. So we're not going to get as much because there isn't going to be as much. It's self fulfilling, right? Um, so it is weird. Like, I think if you did this October 7th through the 14th, like that would have made more sense. Like, I don't know. I don't think anybody has ever asked me in the history of my experience with Christmas on September 7th for me to pin down my Christmas plans. Like, I don't think anybody's ever done that. And if they did, I'd be like, I don't know. You have to ask me um, much closer to Christmas about that. So more Americans than ever. Okay, that's per one study, right? The Deloitte study. So let's take this at face validity. It's one study. It's 4,000 people, which isn't a bad number for a study for survey accuracy. That's not bad. It's not great, and you don't know where these people were from and things like that. I mean, um, but that's again one study, and it's also as we look at it to find face validity. It was done in September, probably also in the news headings were very anxious about supply chain things. And what does this really mean then? Right? Like, um, so is this a permanent shift? Is it other things? Probably not. It's probably, we're in a black swan scenario right now where no one really knows what this looks like. So I don't, like functioning with these disrupted supply chains and things. So it's an interesting heading, right? But if you think about it, it's one study. Like, they should have, it should have at least, the article had, here's one study and here are three other studies, or here's something from consumer statistics, right? Or from retail industry talking about sales, or something, right? And that's not there. So again, this is the one study. You don't use aspirin because it no longer contributes to decreased mini aspirins of heart attack per one study when there's been 1,000 studies on the other side of that. So yeah, it's one of those that I think is just trying to drum up that people go in and they're like, oh my God, like what's going on? It's like, well, one survey, and it's crazy times. And you ask people in September. So it's like, ask me right now, like what are your plans, for, summer? I'd be like, summer things, I guess. Are you going to be doing less or more? Well, I don't know. I mean, I have to kind of see as summer approaches and schedules and things, and I guess other stuff. I don't know. So anyway, Georgia Star. And I don't know if that's truly accurate, right? People, again, more Americans say they won't be buying Christmas gifts, but is that really going to be true? So, all right, our last one here, but first let's get over to the chat. So, all right. Everybody I know is getting gift cards because I refuse to buy gifts with no real world use. Yes, I'm that guy. So, yeah, I'm WisDivision. I'm with you on that. And yeah, there isn't much for me that's also kind of useful. And I think too, I mean, we're a very technology, rich society too. So things are already incorporated. Like, I don't need a digital camera because my phone is already my digital camera, and I don't need a CD player because all my music is already in my phone. So I mean, it's like, but yeah, I probably benefit most if it's a gift card to like the local gas station where I get my coffee. And actually, that is kind of one of the gift cards I receive. But yeah, I just don't want to buy something to have something. John wrote, 1 year I left the tree up the whole year. Laugh out loud. So John, that happened last year, for example. It was widespread, and I wrote a chapter about it in the Velocity of Information, which is available. Well, available soon, but if you go to safetyphd.com right here, and click on the heading that says velocity of information. I updated the web page yesterday. The cover of the book is there. And then if you click on that, it takes you right to the publisher, and then it will be out on Amazon and Barnes Noble and places that sell books soon. But like they just got the cover done and approved and bought the rights to the cover, the image and things like that. So it's moving really fast now. But I had a chapter and I wrote about how last year people weren't taking down Christmas trees. And I was citing interviews and research studies and things like that. And people are saying it just makes me feel good to have the Christmas tree up. So when you would go on in March on Amazon and you would search for like St. Patrick's Day stuff, it had St. Patrick's Day ornaments which you could hang on your tree because they knew people are still their trees up. That actually was happening. So there is this thing, and get this: the Catholic Church, Epiphany, right? I'm sorry. Your 12 days of Christmas, right? You have your manger up, and at the 12th day, you have to take your manger down, or else bad things happen. And they said no. They issued a statement saying you can leave your manger up as long as you want this year. So those types of things were happening. This whole crowd-in behavior. But anyway, it's just kind of an interesting thing to read about crowd-in. And when you're in crowd-in behavior, you do not believe that things are going to get better. So if you go back to that year you left your tree up, there's probably two things. One is like, you're just like, I'm not taking it down. If it's already like in July, you're like, well, I'm halfway to Christmas anyway. I have to box it up and put it away and put it together anyway. So I'll just leave it up. So, which I might do. Like that might be an excuse why I would have a tree up. And the other one is if it's just like, it's comforting, right? People would psychologically report, and I have this, wrote about this in the book. They just say, I like it. It's makes me feel better. It's like, it's green, it's uplifting. And so I'm just leaving it up. So it's kind of the all year round inside tree. John wrote, I got all kinds of gun toys as a kid. Nerf is awesome. So did I. Not as much Nerf, but yeah, some of it. That stuff is cool. Sorry, Doc, manager meeting interrupted my Blue Wrench studios. Oh, SAST. All right. Zippy wrote, didn't the Eagles or one of the band members do this Christmas blues like song? Not quite Porky Pig blues, but good enough. I don't know. Man, now I'm gonna have to look that up. So, and welcome, Zippy. By the way, Zippy, let me see over here if you're blue wrenched or not, because yes, you are. So otherwise, I would have added you to the Blue Wrench gang. And Don Henley, maybe John. Zippy's like, yeah. So I got a Dick Tracy Foley automatic Tommy Burst cap gun in the 38 special set. Holy smokes, Sast. That thing would be worth money to you. You could sell it up to Curiosity Inc. Alex. Earworms, man. Zippy wrote, I try and plot out presents and packages a month ahead to beat shipping costs. Yes. Science is a consensus. Oh, John, that's really good. And that's something that I definitely hint at in the velocity of information. Now, when you're writing a book that has been identified as professional, so School of Airs was labeled as general interest by the publishing house and the libraries and stuff. Velocity of information is identified as professional. So it also then goes to get that kind of category and things. It needs to be very middle of the road in presenting things. It's very exciting, but I can't, if I put a statement in there like science as consensus, that would probably put the book over on one side versus another. Although like if you read the book and someone asked you is science consensus, you'd be like, yeah, the book clearly leads you into what is happening with science, just like is the definition of a word consensus. That's not actually true though. The definition of a word in a dictionary is who is screaming the loudest to get the definition they want. Whoever yells the definition the loudest, that's the definition that gets in. Danny wrote, stimulus checks are not being distributed any longer. Yep. And so, yeah, without paying for Christmas gifts, that can be part of it. Now it's interesting because that article that I had up, one of the questions that people are saying, like inflation, stuff like that, and it wasn't as much saying not having stimulus checks, which would be a great see. Like you just pointed out, Daniel, when you do an article like that, the Georgia Star, more Americans than ever say won't be buying gifts this year. You need to have like, here were 4 questions asked from the survey, and they didn't have any of that in there. Like here, I mean, so here's 4 questions: Is it you don't have enough money? Is it because you're not receiving stimulus checks? Is it that you believe other things are more important, or you know, you believe there won't be items in stock to purchase? So even if you had the money, the items that you'd want to get people aren't going to be there. So like here, for example, so you're like, okay, now I understand what they're asking. So like that could be a real philosophical, ethical question too. Like, I'm not getting stuff for, the questions are all like, um, because things are packaged and carbon footprint and pollution and stuff like that. Does that impact your purchases? People are, I wasn't thinking about that, but I guess I have to answer yes, because if I answer no, I'm a bad person. So, um, yeah, we'll see. I'm in the sense right now that we are in. I don't know how the Dow Jones is doing today. I guess I'll bring it up over here. I think we're in for a big market decline um, in general. And let's see how it is today. It's down, but I think we're in for a big housing kind of crash and just a big market decline. So, um, which means I wouldn't be surprised if there's a reintroduction of some stimulus at some point. Not, perpetually when you do stimulus, then it's just universal basic income, right? But I just don't know how prices of things can just keep going up and up and up and up before it just kind of falls in on itself. Which, by the way, I'm waiting for my property taxes because my house is appreciating significantly in value, as is most people that live anywhere. So it's not that the house itself got better. It's just that suddenly it's worth more. So, Zippy, I'd like a digital camera so I can take night shots of moon and clouds, etc. So, now my new Samsung S21 Plus, like that camera is amazing, and it has like 3 different lenses on it, and then there's like an Ultra which has like even more. But that so far it's proved like really well. It's the best phone I've ever had. I had a digital camera, an older, maybe like 10 years old, and it did have, if you messed with all of the settings, you could get some really cool pictures. I used it on Halloween, I think the year that we got it, and like everything was like really good. Like pictures of, the pumpkins glowing by the house and stuff like that. But I mean, it took like a long time. It just wasn't auto set. And after a while, I'm like, I'm not going to keep doing this. It's just kind of a novel thing. But yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So right there. So anyway, safetyphd.com is where every episode of the Safety Doc podcast is there, all 160. And so links out to YouTube. That's where they are. Everything is there on Podbean. So that's all leveled audio. So again, if you're doing a truck or just want it on in the background and you're listening, then yeah, so that's all leveled. And then there's a blog post, which is about 700-800 words, about a 4-minute read that goes along with everything. So if you're like, hey, like I think Dave interviewed Larry Lawton, if you just go in the search on my website and type in like Larry Lawton or something, like boom, it goes right to that. So the website is well organized for all of that. So over here with WisDivision, Zippy, sounds like hell is in. All right. Zippy, surveys and statistics are wonky, so I tend to have them, then add real world human nature to them. It's depressive for me. It means things are not that bad. Humans are always wonky. So when I was doing my doctoral program at UW-Madison, one of my profs in qualitative statistics is kind of like where you're interviewing people and stuff like that, and surveys. He had worked for Nabisco and older guy. So, and he was going through like the nuts and bolts of how they assembled these surveys and the questions they asked people. And one of the things pretty early on was he's saying surveys just aren't, they give you these ballpark things, but they're not very reliable beyond that. unless you're actually sitting down and asking people and allowing them to do follow up or like to fully gauge that they're understanding things. So, um, and I saw this a lot in school safety, right? People, principal would say, we just did a survey this morning on school safety. Like, how safe do you feel at school on, rating from 1 to 10 and, stuff like this. And it's something literally like the principal or a couple people put together in 10 minutes and sent these questions out. Well, what does that mean? What's the difference between a 4 and a 7? And what does safe mean? Or is it safe when you're walking to school? Or like, is there an adult you feel um, you could contact and share if there was a threat to you or to somebody else? Like these are questions that are much more valuable. Like, where's the most dangerous part of the school? And actually, that's a great question to ask because, like, do you have supervision there? Do you have cameras there? Why is it dangerous? Is it not? I mean, so there's these things called constructs of like, what are you trying to find out? And then you usually ask, so like, is it you're trying to find out, do kids trust the adults? Do they know the system of how to report things or whatever? And so like you usually have 3 or 4 questions that focus on that, but you kind of mix them out throughout your survey or your questions or stuff like that. But anyway, surveys. Let's go. Here we have our last one, then we'll talk. Citizen Free Press. So our friends here from Citizen Free Press, disturbing study on children in mask. Cognitive development drops 23%. So Citizen Free Press saying disturbing study, children in mask, cognitive development drops 23%. So face validity. One, you're saying children in mask, but is it children in also not having access to school? Or is it the fact that they're being toggled from in-person to not in-person to all this, that type of stuff? So trying to make a link there to connect to mask. And there is a link, talk about that. But so face validity on this, like you'd be like, oh my God, like these kids are like way behind. And okay, the thing is, like, this is a black swan anomaly, right? It's, it is just like when the stock market, went off a cliff last March. I mean, COVID, it's a black swan and it returns. Usually, when you look at things in a black swan, it's like you just kind of observe them, but you have a general sense when things get beyond a black swan, when chaos subsides, you get back into more of a stable routine, things will kind of level out, which they usually do. So this whole thing of saying disturbing study on children in mass cognitive development drops 23%. That's almost like saying, hey, this house here dropped 23% in strength when it was on fire. I'm like, oh, I guess, yeah, okay. Whoa, that's alarming. Like, holy smokes. But it also makes sense, right? Because the support is being weakened as it's burning. So you'd have to track these students over time, compare them to cohorts before the pandemic, right? To look at cognitive development. And then if you look at cohorts, well, a cohort from 20 years ago, but a cohort from 20 years ago, that's a different way that they were instructed. And kids today have access to digital instruction also so if they are at home, they still have some access to things. But let's just bring up this article because this is leading to some really bad decisions by states when they see this. So one of those is Minnesota, by the way, that's not making good decisions. So right here. Okay. Hey, our friends here at Citizen Free Press. Disturbing study on children in mask. Cognitive study drops 23%. So, all right. Let's get in. So there's kids in a hallway. First of all, let's take a look here at these kids. So this third girl back here with the pink and blue shirt, she's wearing a mask, which, I mean, it's right. Some kind of visor that's modified. And so like, obviously, as we look through all of these kids, these masks are all different. So you don't have greater reliability between the mask for a few things, not only aerosols, but speech language. I'm a speech language pathologist, and the American Speech Language Hearing Association said, the density and material in a mask can knock down the volume of somebody's speech. And they had formulas for that, for like, every 5 decibels for every 3 feet if you're wearing a mask. And if you're wearing a, certain layered mask, it's even more than that. So that has to come into play somewhere here too. But let's just get down. Social distancing measures, including face masks, are suspected of causing young children's cognitive development to drop by 23% during the COVID scandemic, according to a new study. Brown University scientists penned the study in conjunction with the global consulting firm Renaissance. Oh no. All right. And there we go. Okay. Back. Okay. So they're looking at 1,600 children and their caregivers have been enrolled study from ages 0 to 5 on a rolling basis. So they do have that data. The probe analyzed cognitive development through infancy, childhood, so on. Okay. So then full story here. Okay. So face mask and other social distancing measures may, in fact, impede on children's development. A new study executed by Brown University may. So the thing is, face validity probably does, right? Like if you're a kid and you get in speech language, you don't have the access to the visual cues that go with speech, like producing an M. It's easy because you put your lips together, you're doing an M. But if you are wearing a mask, you don't have that visual cue of making an M. So anyway, they're looking at this and they're saying, these scores drop. The report found 23% drop. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. In the study, researchers first analyzed 1,070 assessments administered on 605 kids prior to March 2020 when COVID began. After 154 assessments, 108 kids between March and June during the pandemic. Okay. So 39. Yeah. This isn't also a lot of kids and like moving kids to an online out of school and jostling with, this is from a face validity standpoint, this is completely what I would expect. And I would expect all state student scores, the test scores to drop, right? So this isn't a surprise from face validity. I think it's authentic. I just don't think it's lasting. I don't believe that when these kids get another 4 or 5 years out versus like a cohort before them that would have not had COVID, right? And got from, elementary to 8th grade or whatever. Like these kids will kind of level out. And I kind of see that in countries that have been interrupted by a war and things like that too. So I don't take this as kind of this big long-term thing. And also, again, cognitive development. When they were administering these tests were likely not administered in person. They were likely done over Zoom or something like that. Likely, because back at that time, you weren't having in-person testing, or it would have been a very unusual testing environment per what these kids were used to. Maybe someone is sitting 6 or 8 feet away, and the kid and the person is wearing a mask, and but it's so this whole testing thing too is like the kids are not taking assessments in a way that they were familiar with. I tried to administer some assessments, for example, online during March of 2020 and 21, was trying to test some of that stuff. And I was having my younger daughter, because I'm like, I want to see how this kind of works, as she was getting some of the stuff from school, and I'm like, it was difficult. It was, and even that technology stuff. So anyway, it's an article that is factual. All of the stuff in here is factual. The thing is, though, is this lasting? Probably not. And a part of what's missing in this face validity is a deeper study also on the maybe mask versus kids who were going online but didn't wear masks and were able to get the visual cues, especially younger kids. And I say that as speech language because, again, um, younger kids for the phonetic and phonemic awareness, like mom, new, like you're not going to distinguish those out as much without the visuals. So, um, so anyway, and then this whole thing of saying cognitive development drops 23%. Cognitive development's a pretty broad term. So yeah, it's what you're testing, right? But what if you're testing the kid's ability to use Zoom or use their technology and interact with their computer and interact over a computer? Well, I mean, they might be better than any kids we've ever had with being able to do that, or upload files or download files, or so this whole thing too is like, there's this part of this of saying not everything just dropped off a cliff, right? Like there's some skills, and there's also we need to get out of ways and see if things level out, which I believe they will. So it's a shock value. Here's what happens when these articles, though, get taken out of context. Disturbing study on children. So in the state of Minnesota, they were looking at their test scores of kids, like their statewide testing in the last year, and say, oh, it's dropped a lot. So we need to do more catch-up work, right? Get these kids back. And so they implemented some statewide program, whatever it is that teachers had to now teach these additional skills that kids apparently didn't acquire last year. Well, the problem with that, well, there's some problems with that. A problem with that is, like, you already are teaching this year's curriculum, this year's stuff, whatever you're doing. So you'd have to supplant some of that in order to teach the old stuff. You can't just like add more hours to the day. And right. So right there is the thing is how does that make sense? What does it look like? So thinking you're going to catch up and make up for this, again, it's a drop. It's that black swan. You kind of, some of that stuff was just lost, right? But it doesn't mean that it's not going to be kind of working itself back and acquired like over time. And when you get to so many years out, you're going to, both of those kids that didn't have COVID, kids that did have COVID, or were in schools that were still in session, like private schools that never went virtual, like that stuff will kind of level out. But yeah, so this type of stuff, when it hits the media and then school boards get nervous and they look at test scores and like, oh my God, like we've got to do all this stuff. And by acting with a knee-jerk reaction, and suddenly they go as a state and are telling their superintendents and the principals, you need to do all this additional instruction to get kids up to speed. And they're like, and replace what? Like, where's all this free time that we have right now? And then if we're doing this, what goes? And so just messed up. So let's go over here to the chat. John is saying, I didn't put mine up last year, talking about your tree. So yeah. WandaVision Productions. This is from Zippy. Clouds are floaty and fluffy like my brains. Oh my goodness. Zippy. So trying to get caught up here. So okay. Danny wrote, I had some data that stated that we'll be heading to deflation as dollar value goes up, but we will have to tighten up the quantitative easing and raising taxes. I could have my info mixed up. Yeah. And I think your info is as good as anybody's info out there. I don't think anybody, I mean, because the variable is this, you never know how the Fed's going to do this. Like, are they going to say, oh, negative interest rates? Or are they going to suddenly, put more money in and buy up more securities and stuff like that? So, but yeah, interest rates should be higher. I mean, common face validity sends that message. I mean, interest rates 3 years ago were 3% and higher, 3 to 4% on a 5-year certificate of deposit. Now it's 1.2%. So yeah, at some point, right? If the whole thing is like from bankers and Wall Street and all of that, and they're saying, well, if you raise interest rates, and it's going to slow down people's spending, and we don't want that to happen, and it's this vicious circle. So, but if you don't do that, then you're just going to have a few products out there, and people are going to be bidding like crazy to try to get them, and inflation's going to go crazy. WisDivision. So WisDivision wrote probably a bit of both. There's national draining wealth, offshoring it, not recycling the wealth back into local markets. Yeah, what a shame. If anything, video games should be cheaper because we've improved the process of making them, let alone anything goes digital, so even less physical production is required. Yeah, the more automation, right? That would totally make sense. Zippy wrote to WisDivision, given how everyone in every office I've been in love spreading germs like mad, then half the office is out with flu, cold. Yeah, people just wash your hands. Come on. John Rice, yep, and most people don't use them right. Touching them and wearing one all day increases the risk of bacterial pneumonia. So that's a face validity thing when we get to, I wrote about it in the velocity of information. So back, let's say, April of 2020, you walk into a big box store, which was still allowed to be open. A lot of people were just pulling out the mask that they had in their pocket, right? And then they put it on and they're going through the store. And then they just took it off and shoved it back in their coffee cup holder in their car. And it was that way for the next 6 months. Same mask, not getting washed, none of this stuff, in their pocket. So like from a face validity standpoint, when you went into these stores, especially like in April, May 2020, you'd walk in and they would have given you a mask, right? Or, they would have had one you have taken. So it had inter-rated reliability. They knew the quality of the mask. Like that would have been certain, and they would have given you gloves and said, so like if you had a mask on, which was a bandana or a coffee filter with a rubber band or whatever, like that, you couldn't wear that. You had to use this in their store. And then when you were done, you would have taken everything and put it into like a big Sharps bin. So then the store could say, hey, everybody that shops here in our store, we have inter-rater reliability on the mask. Like we know, and we also know like their gloves and whatever. But that never happened, right? Like why? From a face validity standpoint, like why? And it really wasn't because you couldn't get the mask. And that would have been a bare minimum, right? But WandaVisit says, still haven't had the root beer flip, and I'm usually the healthiest individual I know. All I do is eat healthy, keep stress low, take my vitamins, and get exercise, nothing fancy. So I wrote about, and not sick for 4 years. Congratulations, good health. I wrote about in the velocity of information how, right, fitness and nutrition, such a big axiom that the better fit you are, the more nutritious food you eat, the better your immune system. That's a fact, right? And through numerous studies, National Institute of Health and whatever. So knowing that, like, again, back in March and April, why didn't, from face validity, what we saw on TV, where, remember the celebrities are coming on and saying, hey, here's how to like clean your cell phone and stuff like that, and all these things, and because it's germy. And well, why didn't we have fitness people on, or like how to make healthy meals or some basic exercise. And I talked about that in the chapter in the velocity of information. Like there should have been a campaign launched in March 2020 called Fitness and Fortitude. And it could have been all badged. You could have gone online, like had your Fitbit and all of your devices, and you could have gotten like, hey, here, after your 5 logins, you get like 15% off Amazon, and you can post to social media that you got your first tier badge or something. People would have gone crazy for that, and you would have been increasing immune systems. So question, when you read that chapter, it's kind of like, why didn't that happen? So anyway, come to your own conclusions on that. But WandaVision, no doubt live services double cost a few, but wrong profits. though the excessive nature of graphics took the cost out. So, hey, what's up, Doc? It's Jim McIntosh. Hey, Jim. Glad to see you here. So, welcome. We're up to 20 likes for this. So, that's awesome. Um, Thank you. And the show does have a 791 subscribers. So, I've got the pin link up above for subscribing. So, thank you very much. WandaVision. You just shoveling the mask in their pockets. So, yeah. Yep. And how many, mask in that same mask that people, there's probably people on the same mask now for over a year. So, yeah, just crazy stuff. So one Jim is saying also all those smart devices mine all your data. Yeah, yep. I was listening to Gavin McInnes from Get Off Your Lawn, and 2 years ago he talked about a business he started that is you go into a retailer. So this is a business he started like 10 years ago and he sold it. But it was you go into a retailer and the retailer would provide free Wi-Fi, but you'd have to like click to the agreement of the terms. And what happens is the retailer then knew everywhere you were at in that store and also your purchases. And they weren't tracking you beyond that. But what the app did then is saying, like, let's say it's a clothing store and they put up this really like big display of socks and all of that. And they're finding like no one is going to the sock display. Like everyone's hanging out by like the purses. So they're like, let's get rid of this sock display. It's not doing us any good. So that's the type of thing, and how long people were in certain areas of the store. So, God, I even knew the name of like what it was called, and I don't right now. But it was then he sold it. So, but yeah, all of that stuff is out there. And you talk about Jim, this stuff is out there. So the other part is like people, just think of people's mentality, right? Like so many people want to post to social media what they've done and their accomplishments. And do you want to post this over to social media, right? So that is this like video game mentality. And that applies to most people. There's a big addiction. So if you rolled out this program and at least for a month or two, people could go in and be posting all their accomplishments or I participated in this, whatever, and it goes on to social media, like they get validated. Like it's a sense to try to hook people in, and it buys you time then to figure out what your next step is. And what's interesting when you read the book, The Velocity of Information, that program that I'm talking about was already pretty much built in 2015 by the Army. And for civilian contractors and civilians working with the Army, this kind of whole digital fitness type program. And so it was already there. Like you could have scaled it. And we already know like the presidential physical fitness stuff that went well into the 80s. Like you literally could have had, with the right people together, 72 hours, you could have all this put together. So when you read it, it's like, ooh, but then, so if this isn't going to be done at a massive level, right? Like at a government level, how could you do this for your family or even for yourself? And there are ways like you could do this. So it's just thinking though, how do you do that? It also makes it transitive, right? Because if you're logging in and it's like, here's you are, from day one, here you are, day 5 and whatever. And it makes people feel like they're moving through something versus like spinning in a whirlpool and something. So a lot of really great psychology in that part of the book. Was the vision. My biggest issue is how much money they're raking in from live services, microtransactions, battle passes, etc. It's not like these companies aren't able to stay profitable. Yes. Oh, God. John Steele, are you familiar with modern monetary theory? Oh, my God, I am. It is a way in which the government could eliminate the national debt by an act of Congress. Yeah. So, yep. Scary, right? Because then you essentially would never, under modern monetary theory, you would never run out of money. I mean, you wouldn't have to do interest rates or anything like that, like people to give banks their money and back and for a 1% CD or anything like that, because money would be hypothetically infinite, although we all know it's finite, because it would just drive inflation crazy. Have that at the car dealership here. I was talking to my friend who we got our one vehicle from, I was talking to him yesterday. He said, yeah, the the projections for the new vehicles, we get 4 in on a lot, and we've ordered them like 8 months ago. And there are already people from 1,000 miles away who have, they're searching for this specific type of vehicle, and they're like, I want to get it. So like they're either going to drive and get it, or they are going to have a hauler get it. But I mean, so it's not like these things come into your community and they're being absorbed by your local community. Like everybody's just searching for these things. And like he said, it could be, again, months and months until we get, some more in. And then it's right. Seeing these things too, of like these markups over MSRP, these market adjustments of several $1,000s. And the dealers can, and the companies can do them because people will buy them. So it is really, really crazy stuff. But yeah, it's scary. Like to me, modern monetary, there's no way to detach that from inflation, but I'm not an economist. So I guess we'd have to ask Aaron Clary on that one. It's freaky though. John Rice, the boxes of masks say not respiratory viral for a reason. Yeah, that's that's another thing, right? Like if you actually look right on these masks. So, and that's the weird thing with schools that require mask. So I taught my legal issue classes in fall for my aspiring school leaders, superintendents, and we were having that discussion. So boards of vote, everybody has to wear a mask. And say, okay, but like when your staff are coming into school, your students, like, how do you know the quality? How do you know what the mask is doing? Because literally, this one kid has a bandana, this other kid has a N95 mask, and this other kid has the mask where you can buy 8 of them for $2 at the dollar store or whatever. Like, what is the actual effectiveness? The aerosol in, aerosol out, and also, like, I mean, are any of these masks decreasing oxygen flow or have unsafe? I mean, it's like we don't see like the study on the mask. We don't see, and I always thought someone would come up with this by now and have some type of machine, right? That maybe at schools or something, and you could take a mask then and put it on, and it would kind of give this rating, like it would do this like breath in, breath out type thing, and like, but no one has come up with that. So I don't know. It's yeah. Super Pilot H. Hey, thanks, buddy. If you haven't signed up to the show, it's the pinned tab at the top. I'm going to drink my coffee. Thank you, buddy. I wear my mask under my nose, no foggy glasses. It's easy to breathe. I pull it away from my mouth when I talk so people can hear me. So, which has the face validity question of, so what is the overall effectiveness of a mask? And also, like, you have very practical issues that the mask introduces. And and we know communication is compromised. I did a show on that. I wrote about it in my book, the exact study done by the American Speech Language Hearing Association. So thanks for sharing that. WandaVision. Well, at least you washed the dang thing. Zippy, wash those masks. Hackers could exactly see where troops are a couple years back. So yeah, like, I mean, it's so crazy because, cars with vehicle GPSs and things like that, so crime, like knowing where vehicles were at certain times, and criminals don't play by the rules anyway, but, it's every time you have your phone on you, or everybody knows, where you're at. One of the first things, so I got the new phone this week, and as they were migrating the old phone to the new phone and putting on the protective cover and stuff like that, the guy hands it to me and says, like, okay, like, set your login and your password or whatever. And then as I turn the phone on, the first thing is like, here is your Wisconsin COVID app. So would you like to turn on GPS? I'm like, no, I don't, I don't, because you're supposed to like tell me when I've been around somebody for 15 minutes who's been positive, but then what does that really mean? I mean, so it's this logistics thing. I've talked about this before, but it's already on the phone. Like I didn't download it. You can't unload it. You can just quote unquote click it so it's not active, whatever that means. Wisdom, blame IP rights. Worker consumers are a small fish in a barrel. Why would a monopoly pay workers more? Heck, they do not even need consumers that much anymore. So things are being automated. It's going to be crazy times. I try to balance things wonky enough to offset the wonky nature of the herd mentality. Sippy. Um, this is Wiz Division. I've had Karens tell me to pull my mask up over my nose before. So you can't even wear the mask below your nose without getting criticized. The struggles of glasswares. Yep. Jim wrote, more rural place, farm and home store, grocery, ace, same town. Love it. Cool. Thankfully, I live in a kind of rural area. And actually, I live 15 miles away from an Amish settlement. And they have a large, like, dry goods store. And it's pretty fascinating because they built it like maybe 10 years ago. They had a smaller one, then they updated it. And it all has ceiling, clear ceiling panels, right? So there's no electricity in the place, and it's done with this old register, kind of like you see, and It's a Wonderful Life, the cash register thing. It's not electric, no credit card, and so you buy everything too in bulk out there, and yeah, it's cool. Like, but then they're also the place to go. Like, we got most of our furniture out there, or if you need furniture, like um, new fabric put on cushions or stuff, and you take it out there and things like that. And it's going to be done. It's going to be done well. So most of our furniture actually was made out there. But I just kind of drew stuff together. I'm like, can you make an end table like this? And then like 8 months later, you get a postcard. It's ready. Come pick it up. So Sastro, I intend to go phone free once my vintage 2015 Moto G3 dies. So yeah. Oh man. Right. So yeah, Sast, I'm on my new Samsung S21 Plus, by the way, which I love. It's a bigger screen and it's much faster, but yeah, fully, it's also my camera. Wizda wrote, it's been scientifically proven that bacteria and germs are easily able to make it through the cotton mass, potentially travel distances up to 50 feet. So these are the things like, where is this information kind of shared? And so that's, you're right on. Like, it would seem there would be some clearinghouse or some website that would, by this time, as face validity, right, would focus on mask. Even like if you're selling mask, that it would be a marketing thing. Like, why hasn't somebody come out on TV and the way that they market mask on TV is for ease. Oh, like, here's the mask you can pull down, and then if you're doing whatever, then put it. If you're eating, pull it back up, but it's not for efficacy. So face validity on this says, if someone really came out there and was doing something and was saying, we've done these studies and whatever, there would be a number of people who would buy those. So like, it's kind of weird. Like, why isn't that done? It's convenience is what people want. It's why you can go on Etsy. And I wrote about this in Velocity of Information. You can go on Etsy and literally there's over 1 million masks available on Etsy. And you can also go into like rhinestone mask on Etsy, and you can find, I think when I looked, it was like 1,000. So those are like, they're punching holes in. Remember those old bedazzler type things? So they're punching holes in these masks in order to put like these rhinestones and stuff. So obviously, like, what's the efficacy? But now, to Etsy's credit, Etsy does have a big disclaimer right up front, and they're saying, hey, like, anybody is saying this stuff is medical grade on here, that is likely inaccurate, right? So this is not being sold as medical grade. So hey, let's go and check this thing out again. So that is that is my new book, The Velocity of Information, which will weigh in at about 250-ish pages. So um, April 15th, that comes out. If you go to my website, safetyphd.com, you can see the press release for the book. And then if you actually clicked on the picture of the book there, it'll take you to the publisher's website. That will soon be up on Amazon and other places that sell book. But this is just in the last like 48 hours that they finalized the book cover, bought the rights to the image, and gave it to me, and so I can distribute it and stuff like that, and got it up on their site. So, but yeah, so that's when I talk about this book coming out. This will be hardback, paperback, ebook, and then later on we'll release an audio. But that's on purpose with the publisher. It's being released again. It's a publishing contract to write this. They want to do print and heavy at the start, and then kind of secondary come in with audio. It's the way that it is. But yeah, there it is. So you'd be like, it's that blue book with the brain on it. Yep. So right there. Really exciting too to like see that because it's kind of like it's a nebulous idea until you're like, whoa, there it is. So this is from Zippy to Jim. I do not like my small rural town much. No cab service, can't go anywhere. So yeah, I live in a town that does have a cab service. It does have a Walmart, and there's a hospital on my side of town, and so there's enough here. Walgreens, like now they do commercials on TV for the downtown area, and they're like, "Come to downtown, whatever." And I'm like, "Ooh, like 80% of our downtown is just empty, and has been empty for a long time." So I understand what you're trying to do, Chamber of Commerce, but I'm sorry, it's just not happening. So this is Jim. Everybody loves the Amish. They mess with nobody. So yeah, for us, it's a plus to live close to an Amish community. They have stabilized that area, and otherwise it was kind of like farms that had been old farms that weren't being kept up. So they moved here, and so now there are several hundred. So things are kept up. They're maintained. We do commerce with them, and like I said, they've probably like half the furniture in my house, like they've custom built. And it's low crime, and I've only had good experiences with that. So WisDivision, I love how you change everything you're doing, but I love how you have to change everything that you're doing, but they never have to do a dang thing. It's even worse when they're partaking multiple unhealthy activities. So yeah. Yep. WisDivision to Jim, rules are for thee, not for me. Seen that one. There's Lyft and Uber, Jim. So yeah, if you don't have a cab. Hey, it's Red Crusader from Ohio. Hey, Red. And by all accounts, we had 50 degrees and sunny in Wisconsin yesterday. So that weather should be arriving on your doorstep right now. So when you walk outside, it's going to be like, whoa. And you're going to be like, hey, weather, you were in Wisconsin yesterday. So yeah, hopefully that's how it works. Like it just keeps working its way across the country, because we had pretty spectacular weather yesterday. So Danny wrote, I live in San Francisco where hipsters have taken over. Sadly, it's a living hell. We'll be moving to a rural place outside of California. First of all, I'm sorry for you, because I have a family that live outside of San Francisco. Juan lives in San Francisco, who's Juan Cabrera in the chat earlier. And I've been watching these videos by Nick Johnson. He has the very popular channel where he goes to places and does, like the top 10 places to live in Connecticut. Or he went in and was doing interviews with people in San Francisco, specifically the Tenderloin, just in the last few weeks. And I'm like, oh my God. And yeah, just to see the media stuff, but then also to talk about the people who say, yeah, like we won't leave our car anywhere. Like we'll let people drive us and drop us off and things like that because it's so yeah. I feel just it's just horrible. I was out in San Francisco back like 20 years ago when and you could you walk around, feel safe. City was still, I mean, that's when they were still doing this push of come here for conventions and stuff like that. And but yeah, no desire to do that today. So Red is saying Red is here. We can start now. Dun, dun, dun. So we're gonna do this for Red. Yay, Red! All right. NIH.gov probably, yes. National Institute of Health. Yep. WandaVision, a dry mask are kind of worthless. I wonder if they study if pee helps or not. It was good enough for the army once upon a time. So the we isn't it interesting though? We haven't seen like specials like TV specials or documentaries or even just marketing on mask versus mask. I've also noticed this from Face Validity in the air filter, furnace filter aisle, right? At all of the retailers. I expected somebody would say, hey, like, we have a special MERV 10 filter or whatever that does more for removing virus or it's treated with some antimicrobial or bacteria. And just like pipe, people probably go for that. Now, the thing is, if you get too much of a restrictive filter, it wipes out people's furnaces, it burns out the motor. But you don't see that though. And you don't also see people trying to market the efficacy of mask. It's the comfort of wearing, affordability, and if it's like, oh, it's a mask, but it's a Green Bay Packers designed mask, or it's your favorite team, or it's your Calvin Klein logo, or whatever it is. It's a fashion accessory. That's the way they've gone. So, hey, gotta go, Doc. It's from Super Pilot. Hey, buddy, thanks for stopping over. Thought I'd pop in and check out. Thank you, buddy. This is the gym. Not up here for some strange region. Had issues with getting a trunk full of groceries. At least rural transportation tries to work with you. Talking about transportation. So this is a gym. The entire Bat area has become a cesspit of drugs and perverts, even out to an hour away. So yeah, the Bay Area. Yeah. My friend Kevin Dalton is running for the mayor of Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, and he wrote a cover endorsement for the Velocity of Information back cover endorsement. And two, he was he's centered on this of hoping that if he gets into office, that this is going to where he's going to put his efforts. Zippy wrote, get rid of all technology, barter with your community, pull cash into the community. It's almost like what the Amish do around us. There's a lot of bartering and kind of trading within the community and kind of like shared exposure to like on medical cost or like labor. Like I was out and I had something built by this Amish craftsman who had built some other stuff for us. And he was having his house built. And we were talking a little bit at that time, like they were adding on to his house because his son was going to live there with his wife. So they had like this two homes kind of side by side, but connected. But it was like other builders in the Amish community were over at the house at that time, like building this house, so kind of going where the need was, like the community was doing that. So anyway, we were kind of talking about it. So elderberry for one. Yeah. Juan is back. Stefan Molyneux did a segment on California, the San Francisco episode was good. So yeah, at freedomainradio.com, Stefan Molyneux. Used to be on YouTube. And then YouTube said goodbye. So Stefan Molyneux. Again, freedomainradio.com. I don't think I'll type that anywhere because I'm sure if YouTube said goodbye to him, I probably shouldn't type it. But yep. And Stefan is in Canada. Jim McIntosh had an uncle that lived out in Walnut Grove or Haywood or something in California. So yeah, I've got some relatives who are about 35 minutes away from San Fran. So, man, I don't know. Oh, I mean, like if they park their vehicles outside, Like you can come out the next day, and even though it's like a you know wealthier suburb and stuff like that, just expect your catalytic converter's gone. Other stuff is stripped off your vehicle if it's outside. It's crazy. Jim had an uncle that lived. Oh, got you, buddy. Zip your well, the retailers at the top of the market have ties. They invest in the competitive documenteers. That's why we have less and less consumer report stuff. Right. Which makes sense too. Like we don't kind of see that anymore. Like there's very little evaluative quality of products. And isn't it amazing though? Like again, just face validity wise, just think if you when you've gone through a store and if you go to mask, that there isn't been or there's not a commercial, there isn't a TV commercial of saying, hey, like we have a mask that is the out of 5 masks, we've got at a local retailer, ours was better than all 5 of them, which support is a true statement with whatever. But and you take that out on TV and that you wouldn't make a gold mine on that, right? Like or you'd think you'd make a gold mine. Like there would be enough people who'd be like, yeah, I want that. Why is it not happening? Um, like I those are the type of things from a face validity standpoint. And I think it's because people are realizing, well, I don't need that to get into the local Walgreens or, Costco or whatever. I just need a covering. So why? And so that's pretty telling, right? Um, so hey, it's Brian Bowen. Brian from the Bronx. Brian is featured in the velocity of information. So Brian, I'm going to do this for you right here. Dun, dun, dun. There's the book. So, and yes, there it is. Be everywhere soon, but real change comes via congressmen and senators, not local level. So, and yeah, it's I don't see anybody stepping up and doing lasting change in the best interest of anybody. But I don't know. It's a mess. Minnow TDs do it too. They can use their tech based on the needs of the product. So I don't know that term, but all right. Jim, the moronic variant will give you a cold and free immunities. Of course, SA must be locked down. So yeah, and I have my friend Phil Heinrich in Germany. We stay in contact like every probably 2 days to give me updates, and like holy smokes, man. There's some stuff obviously that is not media presented, but when you have a friend who's lived there their whole life and giving their experiences, which is very similar to in the book The Velocity of Information, Brian talking about the Bronx, what the Bronx was like during the kind of stay at home orders of 2020. So Jim, remember when people used to just cover a cough with a hand or elbow? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Yeah, you cough into your elbow. That never worked for me, by the way. And yeah, God, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, all the handshake culture, like that was just crazy. Yeah, you apply for a job or you'd be new somewhere and you'd be shaking 30 hands. So back in the kind of pre hand sanitizer days, Mennonite John Rice. So yeah, elbow coughing superior. Used to wait tables. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's so let's what is this right here? Whoa, there's another graphic that just came in. So let's do this. All right, so if you haven't already, I would appreciate if you could do a thumbs up. There's 22. Thank you. And do a subscribe to the channel. I do have it pinned up above now, which I learned how to do. So if you go up there, you can sub in. So we have 791. Let me just get it's an accurate count. It's an accurate count. We have 791. So that is awesome. And let's go back here. So what we covered today, well, first of all, before we get to that, might as well get to this. This is my upcoming book, The Velocity of Information, and you can find out all you need to know about it just over at safetyphd.com. So it is through publisher Roman and Littlefield. This book will be in libraries. It is recognized as professional. School of Airs was recognized as general interest. Both awesome books, but this one, of course, going through reviews and everything. But yeah, so if you go there, if you actually click on the image, once you get there, it'll take you to the publisher. But this will be on Amazon and places that sell books and stuff like that. So it is the Human Society. So, hey, Human Society, welcome. Look at this here. It is the Human Society. So welcome, Human Society. Welcome. So yeah, it's going good. So Brian is right. Why aren't we talking about the camps in Australia? Yeah, Australia, right? The nothing on mainstream, nothing on mainstream media about that at all. So face validity is, we live in a time where we know people who live in these countries and who can authentically tell us of what is happening. Nikolai Razavayu, I interviewed, the Soviet cyclist, in my book, The Velocity of Information. He lives in Australia, and then his family, they live in different parts of Australia now. So like he has perspectives from across Australia of what is authentically happening. And yeah, so it is very important to have that member check network. So Brian's asking, how can we get an autographed copy of the new book? So some people have asked me this, and here's what I'm working on. So the book comes through the publisher, right? So if I self-publish, this would have been easier to do like an autograph version, but the publisher allows me to buy X number of copies, and then at a reduced rate, if I then sell them, as long as the shipping, so as long as like the shipping of the book and the cost of the book equal basically the cost if someone was to buy the book from an Amazon or from the retailer. So it's not like I get this big break on these books where then I can sell them and undercut the publishers. It doesn't work that way. But they do this because they'll be like, well, what if you go to a conference, Dave, and you want to sell your book? You want to bring like 50 books with you to a conference. So they have these things. So what I'm trying to do is to figure out what a way that I can have books available, and then just like PayPal, I can set it up so that not a lot of people are going to contact me, but you could PayPal me. And Brian, by the way, like, you're in the book, so you're getting a copy of the book inscribed, hard copy. So, but for other means, like I would just need, as long as it's not international shipping, because that's a nightmare. But I would just have people PayPal me like the cost of whatever the book is selling on, if they were to get it from like Amazon, right? And that would include the shipping, because it would make up the difference for what I'd have to pay on shipping plus the other thing. And then PayPal takes care of the taxes. So I'm figuring this out a little bit, but yeah, I've had this request quite a bit now, which is fun. Like it's absolutely awesome. And I do have a custom stamp for every book that is inscribed. And then I also use my Mont Blanc pen, and I date it also, which is kind of just a neat little feature, right? Because there's this thing like you're supposed to date books because if people can time travel back, they want to know the date you signed it so they can find you and ask you questions about the book. It's just kind of a fun thing, but yeah, I'll have more information on my website once kind of that all happens. So, and yes, this book will be audio, where School of Airs didn't have an audio version. The audio will not be available right away, though, and that was per contract, per the publisher. They want the print version to saturate first, and then later would be the audio. The audio is actually going to be recorded, though, like in the next 3 months. It's just be a little while before the audio version comes out. So, which is exciting. Like, I'm really thrilled. The book has a lot of custom graphics that were made for it too. Um, so the print book is really awesome. So the audio won't have all of that in it, but the audio it's a it, it brings right this. I think it really lets you think about the book if you have a lot of time to just kind of passively like listen. So I have sections of the book that the narrator has already done. We're trying to figure out like some tone and stuff like that. I just love listening to the book. Like that's kind of my format right now. I mean, because I did all of the writing and all the other stuff. I've kind of like gone through that. Like I know the book. Um, but to listen to the book and especially professional narrator, it's pretty amazing. When it's your own stuff, right? Like I'm like I wrote that. That's my stuff. So it's really good. And so you're going to, down the road, and the audio version will be priced lower, but like don't hold out for the audio version because that's months down the road per this. Um, so, but if you are in the book, yes, I will be sending you. I'll be contacting you for your postal information, and then I will be sending you a signed copy. So there are quite a few people that I interviewed and said, Brian, you will have a book. Yeah. So Zippy wrote, I need to buy it on Amazon, but darn it, I need to RP it so I can copy the text into the text-to-speech program. So yeah, they do have like the ebook version out there. So I don't know how that works. Yeah, I know what you're saying, and that's one of the things where I really wanted to have the audio version for accessibility, and plus I just think it presents really well because I speak to the reader in this. It's not like listening to the science paper, and there's these 10 interviews, so like it goes really well in audio, like really great. So that I wanted. I'll have one PDF, though that is not one that's publicly and things like that. But I do have one PDF eventually when everything gets done. It's called like a proof PDF. And they give that, I mean, the publisher or then the author has it. And it's a convenient way for me to kind of mark up and reference things like if I'm doing articles or specific presentations on the book, but that's never really meant to be out there. There's only certain conditions. Like if someone has the book and they're going to do a review, like it's okay to do that alternate format or something like that. But so Radio Shack. Oh my goodness, I remember Radio Shack. Had one in our town here. And speaking of custom graphics, why do you not ask me to do some? I would have not charged you free pro bono. So, well, I'm not done. I still have custom graphics that I need for other things. So, well, thank you, Brian. So, yes. So it wasn't omission with intention. So trust me on that. It wasn't. The person who did my custom graphics for the book, Amy DiStefano. So Amy and I are co-credited on the graphics, and so that's. But yeah, I would have nothing intentional on that. So, but yeah, I'll keep you in mind. Especially, there was something just recently where I'm like, oh, Brian, okay, here, buddy, I will have to get this information to you for the audiobook. I need to have the cover of the book, which is right here. I need to have that in a certain size, like a square. So, so anyway, like, I don't know. I do know. I just don't have it in front of me. Like, there's a certain thing if it's 1200 DPI by 1200 or whatever, but, and I don't have that. And the publisher is this part is mine of uploading that thing and other stuff. So like I'm thinking I got to get a hold of someone who can put this and then like either do it so the background is blue and it's just this perfect 12 by 12, like not reshape it and distort it, but just at least put it so there's some background. So I have this image. So Brian, I'll be in contact with you. I don't need it right now, but I'll get a hold of you on that. I think anybody with some graphics, you'd be like, boom, got it. Jim wrote, they had good car audio stuff. Yeah, Radio Shack. Yep, Tandy Computers also. Is VOI out in paperback yet? You have a sale for me. Hey, Red, thank you. So it will release April 15th in hard copy, paperback, and ebook, and then later it will come out in audio. So yes, it will have a paperback version. So which is awesome. And yeah, Red. So you are on my list of people I will send a signed book to. So I do have an Excel sheet of certain people and that you've participated in the book or member checking or some capacity in that. It is my appreciation for that. Like you will be getting a signed hard copy. So yeah. And Red, you are there, buddy. So, but I need to be, when it gets closer, I need to be contacting people. I've contacted some people now, and some of the responses are, well, I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to be, like in April, like either some people are, moving or be traveling or something like that. So like, so I'm like, okay, like I'll get a hold of you like in March and then just give me an address to where to send it to. So Kindle's a pain in the arse, says Zippy. So that was why I wanted to go with the audio. I know it doesn't solve everything, right? But it does give another way of accessibility for people. And I tend to listen to audiobooks. I have to listen to it like 3 or 4 times to really like let it sink in. That's my preferred format. So, and this book will be done very well in audio. Like I said, it's the narrator is not only a book narrator, right, but is also a well-known actor. So I can share more about that once we get closer to release. But yeah, I mean, this is somebody like we've all seen on TV, and is very excited about this book too. So it's one of those things too. Like it kind of gets to be a compliment for this is, I don't know, this person is already very well established, not like a resume builder, but it's kind of like when it's not Morgan Freeman, by the way, but it's kind of like when Morgan Freeman like does like a science show, is doing some narration on that. It's kind of like that. But anyway, God, you just emailed me the picture of the highest resolution. I'll get you what you want. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I'll get all that to you. So Taros Publishing handles Andy Nowicki's book. Jim. Yep. And Taros. And TJ Martinell writes some stuff for Terror House. So yeah. So my publisher is, Rowan Littlefield is an academic themed publisher, and they publish School of Airs. And I'm a university professor, so I'm a PhD professor. And for my work to be counted or acknowledged as scholarly work, and then also to have access to libraries. So School of Airs in a lot of libraries, like every day it gets added to more libraries across the world, which is kind of like it's one of its biggest markets is just growing in libraries. But I need to be in a tier 1 or tier 2 publisher for like academics. So that's why the book kind of came out the way it does. And that's why I partner with Roman Littlefield, because then it works toward my university scholarly contributions and stuff like that. The trade-off there is, and you get like a really good quality book. Like when I say quality, like this is my first copy of School of Airs from 2019. And I take this everywhere. Like the corners aren't bent, it's not falling out of its spine and stuff like that. This book they just make really good books because they're meant to last, be like, library grade. So the thing I give up on, or I trade off on that is not having it quite as accessible, because it is a little bit of a higher price point. I don't have anything to do with price. That's all set by the publisher. And then that it is, I'm not selling it direct, right? Like can't like I don't have that price point, and um, but it does have a full, like a full comprehensive index, right? Done through the public. So publisher takes that on. They take on marketing. They take on all of those things. So I know I'm getting into like it's everything I wanted to accomplish with both books. School of Airs. School of Airs. This book was my pathway to getting back onto PBS TV in 2019. Built right off of this book. So I don't know. Velocity of Information isn't going to be a book that's going to get me back on TV, but it is going to be a book that will get me additional keynote. I mean, right now I've been in the last few days. I had a couple meetings, and I'm getting a lot of offers to do additional keynote presentations. So I come in and talk about different things of safety or different chaos things or people or organizations in chaos. And of course, the book is huge with that, right? Because it's credibility point. At the university, the book is huge because the university can demonstrate our faculty as faculty members contributing scholarly work. And so, and for me, like I needed the book to what to really set me up in that capacity of that level 1 or level 2 university thing. Not that I'm going anywhere. I'm not. But the classes I teach are all like higher end graduate classes, and I've taught for university for like 20 years. But so then they just keep giving me the opportunity to instruct these or new classes. And one thing I actually proposed, I don't know where they'll go with this. I don't think it's a no though. I said, this book can be its own class, but if it's an elective, like nobody takes electives really anymore. It has to be part of a program. So I'm like, I think this could be a part of business management or business ethics or psychology or masters. So I put in a few places and said, I'm sure I could build this into a class, which would be a dream for me to do that and to use my own book for that. But anyway, like it's an awesome book. The stories, it's very well put together. The graphics that go with it are phenomenal. Just everything. There's nothing out there like it. If you know Malcolm Gladwell, so people who reviewed my books said, you write like Malcolm Gladwell. Like, you guys kind of like think the same, like John Ronson, kind of in that thought. So I think that's pretty close. But it's I don't know. Velocity of Information. So the first AP press release comes out April 11th. Then there's another AP press release in May, and then there's a third AP press release when the audiobook comes out. So those are all pretty big. But yeah. Hey, it is bacon. Oh, by the way, Jim is like, I hate PBS. So someday I'm going to do a show. I'm going to do a show about on my podcast of what it's like to present on PBS TV live before a live studio national audience, because I've done that twice. And I had good experiences with PBS. I'll just share what that process was like. And I have some, photos that can kind of give some context and things like that. But it's something it's hard to prepare for, and you got to really be on your game, like, because I had this running kind of joke that I shared. I asked PBS, because they have the thumbnail for when I present it in 2019, or their image that they put, and it's school safety rhetoric versus reality. And it's this image of me where I'm looking out into the audience, I'm holding this remote, this clicker, and it's just a perfect picture from a perfect angle. And I'm not looking at the camera. It's like this position of authority. I look serious, like all the backdrop there is the PBS stuff. So I got a hold of them and said, could you send me that image so I just want it for my own use. Like, I'm not going to resell it. I just want to be able to put it up at presentations. And as kind of, like a credibility thing, you tend to do that as a presenter at a keynote. You just take 2 or 3 slides to convey to the audience, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I said, I want to make it into wall art, like it was a landscape and said it would just be cool in my office to have that. So they got back to me and said, no, we can't, we can't give it to you. And I said, well, can I buy it from you? Like, because like for example, a historical society and stuff, they sell images. You can buy the right to it. And usually it's not that much. And they said, no, we're not set up to do that. And then they came back and said, well, we have a third option. You can return to the studio and we'll set it up so it looks like this, and then you can get the pictures taken. And I said, well, it's generous, but like I'm older, I don't look like that anymore. And like that was all in the moment, right? Like I said I appreciate it, but no, I can't. I'm not going to do that. So I don't know. I I was hoping they would say, yeah, for personal use, this is you. You can use the photo. So, but I also I also get it. So not sure what's going on there. Um, so let's check here. It's Bacon. What's up, dog? Hey, Bacon. Hope things are going okay with your car. Any updates there? Let us know. Um, Jim, every time they have good things out, they'll trip you, even though they always have government funding. So guilt trip. Yep. Bacon. So yeah, I have a couple shows I want to do, and again, I said one is the PBS experience from the presenter side of it, what it's like, and kind of this big wind up to it, and when it's actually happening, and what it's like afterwards when the cameras go off, because you don't leave. Like, you are expected to stay for as long as the audience asks questions. So for me, each one of those was like 2-3 hours after the show's done. Like you're up on stage. And the weird thing too is like when you're up on stage, like the way that the lights are, like it's hard to see the audience. So it's like you're looking into the sun for like 2 hours. And yeah, it kind of gets weird too, because like you don't, I mean, all these people raise their hands, so it's like you, and then someone else. Um, but like I said, it's all good. It was all for me a positive experience, and the videos and the edit and how they rated G, get everything out there and distribute it. But I do want to talk about that, because actually I don't know anybody else who's done that. I mean, um, and the fact of like live, I'm not nervous, although like there was a technology glitch that I kind of anticipated, and they downplayed it. Like they're like, no, this will never happen, and then it happened during the second show, and we kind of maneuvered around it. So hey, Bacon, what's up? um Jim, Sawan, I'm surprised. WandaVision. Imagine not being to own a literal image of yourself. Yeah. So, so let me do this. Let me just show you guys. So, and here we go. It's on, like when I search for it, it comes up like on all these PBS stations all over. So there it is. So that is the image of me on PBS. So of course, like it's dark. It has a tint on it because I'm not playing it right now. But like that image is awesome. It is a serious, like, it's a stoic image. Like that is an image I want up on the wall in back of me. And that's the image I was trying to acquire. And they're like, nope. So I'm like, darn it. So and people have asked, or people have offered to get it. I can screenshot that for you and get it high res. I know, but like it's got to get it by the rules. So yeah, I don't know. I had a weird feeling. It was one of those things that they don't get asked about. Like no one asks that question, and you don't want to be the first one asking, because then it's usually no, because they haven't done it before. So they'll be like no, and I don't want to be persistent, because then that kind of gets weird. And like I do think they're going to bring me back for the trilogy. I mean, when we got done with the second show, and the shows do really well in programming. And of course, when there's school violence that happens, local PBSs around the country look and say what's out there that we can put into our programming that's in PBS. So my shows tend to get a lot of replay air. But yeah. So all right. So guys, let me wrap it up here. Why wouldn't they use Searle Filmworks film if they were thinking? So I do not know. Oh my goodness, it's Chad Elkins. Hey, we should hang out soon. Absolutely. Look at Chad Elkins, the Oracle of Chicago. So, all right, Chad. Guess what? My book releases, and here's the book right here, April 15th. You know what that is? Tax day. So I asked my publisher, I'm like, why? They said, it's kind of like a quiet homage to Chad Elkins. I'm like, oh, I get it. Now it makes sense. It's kind of like a high five to Chad Elkins to release it on tax day. I said, I get it. That's cool. So they're going to try to do some cross branding, that book, tax day, Chad Elkins, pull all that power together. It's an awesome marketing strategy. I mean, I was just like, well, that's brilliant. They're like, of course it is. You know what we're doing here. So remember, kids, always copyright your Snapchat pics before taking them. Yeah. So, right. Danny's saying, can't you have your image copyrighted? So that image is from the video taken by PBS. So that's a still capture they took out of there. So they copyrighted the video, right? So yeah. Now, like, so that they own the copyright. They'd have to sell me or like issue a document saying that I would have the right for personal use of the image, which I thought they would do. Like I've had other people do that for stuff. Like if I present it somewhere as a keynote and they record it, or people take pictures of the organization, and then I'd be like, hey, like, could you send me a couple of these that then I could use when I'm presenting other places, or stuff. And they'll be like, yeah. So, but that's not the way it's not the way it worked here. So, all right, Operation National Treasure. We're going to steal the Declaration of Doc's image independence. So, yeah, there'll be like a change.org thing. I do have to say, like, I have a very good experience at PBS. They're very cordial. Like I said, they were going to offer to bring me back to, to do that image. It's just one of those quirky things. Cause I'm like, no, seriously, can I just have the image for my basement, my office, my studio? I would love to have that image down here, because it was this really great moment in time to do that presentation. So, but at least it lives on there. And I do have some other, people in the audience were taking some pictures, and there's some that are pretty neat. So there's one I might have put up behind me, but yeah, it's kind of like the image of scoring the touchdown or something like that. So, all right. Jim used to do 1 hour film. It's motion picture film, essentially, probably without the audio wires. And Bacon is to Sass. Oh my goodness, Bacon. Son, hope your car is doing well. We need some updates. Zero weight oil. So, well, everybody, I am going to wrap it up here. Thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks for subscribing to the channel that's pinned up above. Monday night at 8:15 Central Time, Sass One Too Many will be my guest on the Safety Doc. And I will have that link up here in the next few hours. I accidentally started that show today. When I rebooted, it went to that one. So I'll just like nix that one off and then just repost it. And with the new link and everything, it'll all be up there. Same exact thing. Monday night, 8:15. That's amazing. So Sass talks about when he was a young man, had a traumatic brain injury, just 2 years of rehabilitation so he could get out of a chair, and the things that he's able to do now. And as we get through that, and a lot of you know Sass, like he's participated in other shows. He's been over on the threads. So it is, I'm really looking forward to it. So, well, everybody, this is your friend, the Safety Doc, and I am out of here. So it's been a great morning. Thank you for Face Validity Fridays. All right. See you, everybody. Face Validity Friday.